if it spins up correctly, we should be live. And it says yes. Good connection. Let me double check. Yes, it looks like we are live. Hello, fine folks on the internet. Let me make sure I'm muted over here because I don't. Yep, nope, we're good. We're good. Hello. Davina says hello. Lewis Law here. We got Sid Lives. We got CR Poll. We got all the friends of the show coming in. Oh, I need to change this over to live chat. There we go. And we're here. I've got two fine friends with me. I got Will. Hi, Will.
Hello, Adam. How you doing?
What's
Welcome.
going on?
Hello.
And then I got Alex. Alex, I always appreciate you coming in late at night. I know it's evening your time, so instead of doing work, or I'm asking you to do more work, so sorry about that.
Oh, it's fine. I mean, it's a relaxing part of the day. Actually, for me, it's a lot worse on the weekends. I can't ever do this kind of stuff on the weekends. But yes, there's a lot to talk about today, I would say.
Yeah, we got fun stuff. Oh, we got other friends of the show. Borea Zero, The End, Tank 2. What happened to the original Tank? I don't know. This is the sequel to the Tank. Tank 2. Yeah. Yeah. Borea Zero. Hello. And we even we have some good questions over on the Discord for Alex. Even one person, Matt, saying thanks for having Alex on again. People like having you on. Matt. So.
That's very kind.
We're here to talk about Max Payne 2.
Oh man,
yeah,
I wish.
Let's
go.
Just change topic.
Yeah, right at the last minute. Forget video cards. And Borea Zero, he's the prequel. Yeah, that's funny. And Sid Lives. No, I am not joined by Elon Musk. This is Alex from Digital Foundry.
Yeah,
that's mean.
Yeah,
I know.
Do you
people
get that?
Always say
Do
that I
people
look
say
like
that?
yeah. People say I look like a cross between Ezra Miller and Elon Musk. So two people of despicable reputation, unfortunately.
But they're rich people, right? So you look like a rich person. Maybe that's I'm trying to spin it here. I don't know.
I don't know. Will, does anyone say you look like anyone?
All white guys with beards and glasses look the same, it turns out. So I get that a lot. Pretty much everywhere I go. And for a long time, I could tell exactly how old people were by the Will Smith joke that they made when they met me.
Which Will Smith joke?
Yeah, like if they made a Welcome to Earth, that meant they were like in high school or college when Independence Day came out in '96. If they were
jiggy with it,
jiggy with it, they were a little bit younger. Yeah.
What's a Fresh Prince? Do you ever get a Fresh Prince reference
only
anymore?
From the olds. Only from the olds.
From the olds. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Scrappy 69 says they were born in 1969, so we have a fellow old here. So
nice.
Oh wow.
And then we real hot off the presses. First question for you, Alex, from Jay Brinks. How hard would it be to work to convince Linus Sebastian that motion blur is worthwhile? How hard would Linus have to work to convince you it's garbage?
For me, convincing someone that doesn't like motion blur is really hard because I think the experiences they've had with motion blur have been in games and older games and in situations where it's just wasn't either configured right or it wasn't probably well made for the game at all. Like for the longest period of time, I made a video about this, it was Tech Focus video a number of years back about motion blur, and like most people got their experience with even turning on motion blur in games where it was like super rudimentary and very poor actually. So I don't think I could actually convince many people these days that have been gaming for so long, but young people, not the olds, maybe.
Look, you convinced me to flip it on for Forza Horizon when you all did that video. And
yeah,
I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, this is pretty good. This is way better than I was expecting. I wouldn't have been able to tell if I didn't know. So
wait, because Will, you're traditionally not a motion blur person?
Usually I go in and turn off depth of field and motion blur immediately, like all
depth of field too. Wow.
Yeah, okay. I don't like depth of field.
Interesting.
I mean, people use depth of field to hide like load ins and pop in and stuff like that. I'll take the pop in and the frames over the.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. All right, and then we got some people wishing Gordon well. Yeah, I just chatted with him yesterday about something I'm working on that's behind me. You can't see it, so it's not breaking embargo. But yeah, Gordon's doing good. Hope to have him back soon. He continues to talk about work stuff, so he's ready to get back to it. And no, Charles, you're not an old. You're young in my heart. You're young in my heart. I think I think if I had to guess, so not to put you on blast, but Alex, you're probably the youngest of the three of us. So
I mean, I don't know. It
Yeah.
depends on how old you think I actually am.
you're probably not as old
I
as
am
Will. and I,
33.
think. Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah,
33.
yeah. You're much younger than me. I'm 41.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
awesome. I wouldn't have guessed at that. That's not great.
Being
Well, that's
being
good.
old is
Great.
awesome. There we
Well,
go.
I'm
Alex says
35,
being
so
old
this
is awesome.
awkward now, you guys.
Oh yeah, Will, the 35-year-old Will.
35. I started when I was 12 working at office.
Oh, that's pretty funny. I could see that though. I could see that. Anyway, cool. I think we're good. And yes, the end. I have Cyberpunk running on a. That GPU is not embargoed. That is that. But yeah, I'm using it as a space heater. It's cold in here, so I'm just letting it run at the screen and warm up my room. And hey, happy birthday to the end, who just turned 40 this month. So
Happy
Oh,
birthday.
congratulations.
yeah, there you
Wow.
go. Cool.
I'm-
I think everything's sounding good, looking good. I realized I didn't bring up the show notes. Oh goodness. So give me 1 second. And there we go.
I'm just looking at a 4070 Super, not the one we're going to be talking about, but the other one. It's like all black.
You mean
It's
you mean
kinda
this?
gorgeous.
Yeah. Oh, we both have.
It's
Look at this
gorgeous.
matching.
The mat.
Yeah.
The mat's pretty good.
Except for like
Yeah.
you can see it. It just gets real.
I know. I'm trying not to do that right now.
Not
because
that
it's
I'm
so
like
gorgeous.
I don't feel like
But,
I'm a greasy person, but this thing definitely shows
No,
up.
it's fine. I'm a
Fingerprints.
greasy person. But I love the FE cards, and I really like the smaller things that NVIDIA's been making the last couple of years.
Does it
at
have
least in
the
terms of form factor?
Does it have the AVC encoder? I think all the 4000 series, all the
They should have the dual.
AVC, right?
I think they do.
I think
Yeah,
the 4070 only has a single. I don't think it does.
Oh, is it a single one?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I think it's
you're
the TI that has the dual encoder. Not quite sure.
Because Twitch is rolling out beta invites to that right now. If you signed up, apparently, so you can
Right.
AVC
Fancy.
over on Twitch these days. If you're in the
Fancy.
in.
Fancy. Well, everybody here in the chat is in the in. Looks like audio's looking good, sounding good. We're good. We might even have a special appearance by one Elena Yee, so be on the lookout for her. In the meantime, let me double check my. Oh, for some reason, I have a really low bit rate. I need to.
Got to get that bitrate up.
Yeah, I gotta.
There's probably an ad on Twitter that'll sell you several services that can help with that.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, keyboard typing, the best to do during a live stream. You guys don't do DF Direct live, right?
No,
No.
I think we did it like once. It's pretty rare. It's always an edit. It's an edit after
okay,
we're
yeah.
back.
That's smart. There we go. Okay.
I'm always impressed with people who can do a podcast at the same time every week live, because in the 15 years I've been podcasting, I've never successfully done that. I think it's always changes times and is flexible.
Well, I'm not going to say we're always on, like today we're on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, but I would say the majority of the existence of this show, we've been Tuesday at 10:30 a.m.
Yeah.
if I had to go back and look. But sometimes we would change for embargoes, and then it just ended up we were changing it too much, and I was like, you know what, F embargoes, we're just gonna hit it when we hit it. So, the end is asking, is AVC noticeably different than NVENC? What do you think, Will?
The better video quality at the same bit rate is it's like the jump from MPEG 2 to H.264 to whatever AVC is the next progression. And so I don't know what YouTube ingest does still is H.264, right? But Twitch is just now flipping on AVC for a limited kind of beta trial right now, which the 1080p bitrate for Twitch has been 6,000 kilobits for a bazillion years now.
Right? Oh, that's
And
wild.
like the video quality is crap when you're talking, especially as we move from 30 to 60, from 720p streaming 30 frames a second to 1080p streaming 60 frames a second. So yeah, better video quality would be nice.
Friend of the show, or I guess writer for PC World, Adam from Epos Vox, he did a really good article recently on PC World. He freelance writes for us every once in a while about the new Twitch integration. So definitely go read that one. Anyway, we should get going. I said we weren't going to do a long pre-show, and we did do a bunch of rambling talking. So here we go. Then this is really bright.
This is the content before the content.
It's the content before the content. I'm bringing up my notes because I didn't change them. So Okay, cool. There we go. We'll just wing it. We will just wing it.
We got this.
Yeah, we got this. Here we go. Everybody ready? Everybody good? Green lights, thumbs
Rock and
up.
roll.
All right, here we go. Let's start it. If you are looking for a kick-ass and reliable work or gaming PC, head over to falconnorthwest.com and configure the rig of your dreams. In this episode of The Full Nerd, we review some GPUs and talk about 2024. And I did not queue up the intro, and there we go. Welcome to this episode of The Full Nerd. It is number 287 of this podcast. This podcast is PC World's premier PC hardware podcast. I am your fill-in host, Adam Patrick Murray. We will hopefully be joined by another fellow PC World person, but in the meantime, I have two, my friends. First up, I got Will Smith. Hello, Will Smith.
Hi, Adam.
Welcome back to the show. Always good to have you.
It's good to be here. Thank you, as always, for having me.
And next up, my other friend is Alex Battaglia from Digital Foundry. Hello, Alex.
Yeah, hello there, Adam and Will. It's like every week a new graphics card at this point, so we have to talk about it eventually.
Right?
I mean, it's more graphics cards have come out in the last week than came out from 1995 to 2000 at this point, I think. It's like the whole generations of generations.
Yeah, hopefully there's not too many left in the closet back there. I'm just gonna keep it. Who knows what's in this closet back here? Yeah, what's on your shelf, Alex? What is on your shelf?
Oh my God.
Actually,
The one right behind me, there are some old classic GPUs there. There's a X800 XT from Radeon. There's an X1950 Pro from Radeon and a 9800 Pro. I have a lot of ATI boxes.
Fancy.
For some reason.
Is that a CRT back there, or is that a
This is a
LCD?
this is a TFT monitor right here, and then on the floor, it's a little bit hard to see. There is actually a CRT right there.
Okay.
A little hard to see.
Will, are you using your CRT currently?
I do. No, I don't. My CRT is in storage downtown San Francisco, close to the PC World offices. Actually,
I didn't know.
I've had a storage unit there for like 20 years now, so it's where all the old stuff lives.
So that thing's just sitting there like getting money, right?
Look, it's getting worth more and more every day. As more,
it's like your investment.
Every time somebody drops a CRT, one day it'll be the last one standing. Is my dream. I'm gonna retire on that bad boy. That's my retirement monitor.
Do you think there's a? Real quick, do you think there's a lockbox big enough at a bank for a CRT? You're like, hey, I've got to put this in a lockbox, and they're like, what? We can't.
Look. The one thing I've learned over the last 20 years is if you have enough money, they'll do whatever you ask them to at the bank. You just go in and you're like, hey, I want to put this goat corpse in your safe deposit vault. And they'll be like, okay, sure, whatever, we got you.
That seems like an oddly specific reference. I'm not going to ask. Alex, you did have a question though.
I was just curious what type of CRT it is, if you recall. If you haven't used it in a while, it's been in that lockbox for so long.
Well, so I gave away a 24-inch Sony Trinitron, the big flat ancient one, years and years ago when I left Max when I moved last time, because I didn't want to haul. This was 18 years ago, and I immediately regretted it. And it has since gone on to better things. The CRT that's in there is probably like a 20-inch Sharp. It's nothing special. It's like an old. It's the TV that I had on my desk when I was working for Ars, literally in the late 90s, early 2000s. That had probably an N64 or something hooked up to it. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're not here to talk about CRTs, but before we get into the meat of the topics, I do have a quick little hit. I just got these in the mail yesterday. The Noctua Brown LTT screwdrivers. Are you guys fans of LTT screwdrivers? Do you understand how nice
I've yet
it
to
is?
use one.
Oh wow.
I've yet
Well,
to use one.
Yeah,
honestly.
I saw
got
Gordon let
two
me look at
colorways.
his when I was in there once, but I haven't actually touched it. So
it's all about the knurling. You got this nice grip here, and then it's like a perfect fidget item. I have mine. I actually have another one on the desk right behind me. Yeah, and so I just sit here. It's like the ultimate fidget item.
I've never been a ratchet screwdriver guy. I like the ones with the spinny stump at the end of the handle, so you can get it across
Yeah,
your
those are
palm and spin.
comfortable.
Interesting.
The one thing I'm also a big fan of, and this is not too common, is ones that can also adjust the angle that you're screwing from. Because I recently put together a mini ITX case for someone, and I was having the problem that the screwdriver, like the part where you put in the bit at the front, it was too thick to get into an actual area. And if I had like an angled screwdriver, I could have done it, but alas, I did not. But those exist too.
Yeah. Well, we're not here to talk about mini ITX, even though I would if we want to just wipe the slate clean. We can talk about mini ITX. But you know what would fit in a good mini ITX system? A 4070 Ti Super. I don't know. I guess it depends.
Maybe it depends on the system, right?
Yeah, it depends on the system. So if you did not know, NVIDIA continues January's onslaught of GPU launches. Last week was, and since the show last week, I got in a 4070 Super that's got fingerprints all over it. There is no reference model for the 4070 Ti Super, but hopefully, I think they are sending me an Asus version that I can test out. So we'll see about that. You don't have a 4070 Ti Super on hand? Correct. They
send me 1 or 2 video cards a year, and it's ones that they are very enthusiastic about usually. So
okay. And Alex, I know Digital Foundry is looking to have a 4070 Ti Super review up.
Yeah, it would have gone up, but it's currently not up. Rich is currently working on it. The numbers we'll talk about them soon enough, but it's not the most interesting GPU release this year so far.
Yeah, it's been kind of weird because all three of these super refreshes were kind of brought up or announced during CES, and I feel like each one of them had different excitement levels or lack of thereof excitement levels. Alex, I haven't had a chance to talk to you since CES. Well, first off, what did you think of CES for the PC at least?
From the PC perspective, I was very interested actually in the monitor announcements because
we will talk about
if
that
you ever
later,
watch DF Direct, John and I have big bugbear issues with PC monitors, and they keep getting better over time. One thing that we always wanted was more OLED, for example, and there's more of that coming now. So that was really exciting. And I guess I kind of did like these super refreshes in theory. We'll talk about in practice very briefly.
Well, maybe recap real quick your thoughts, or maybe DF's general thoughts of the 4070 Super from last week. Where did you fall on that?
It was essentially a new way to, in that price class, bring out something that is better, and it's something that we wish the original 4070 was, because it wasn't always a clear cut above the 3080, at least in rasterized performance specifically, all the time. So it didn't feel like a great gen-on-gen win that we were used to seeing, I would say, pre-RTX 2000 series. Obviously, the amount of stagnation in the middle class of GPUs in terms of performance is something that we talk about quite often on DF Direct. So we were pretty happy, and I've got one right here, just like you do have, a 4070 Super. I think this is a pretty cool GPU. I do technically wish it was always still a little actually less expensive than it currently is. I'd say that about almost every NVIDIA GPU at this point in time. But I think it is a better successor to the 3080 going down a class. I think it should have been the original. Actually, RTX 4070 should have been the Super.
Yeah, you had a real good question on one of the recent DF Directs of somebody looking to upgrade or side grade from a 3080 Ti, right? And
Yeah, it was actually a 3080.
a vanilla 3080.
To 4070 or even the 4070 Ti, and I actually advised them to wait because I thought unless every game you're playing is path traced one, that DLSS 3 is amazing and fun. But I think if you just had a little bit more patience, waited for RTX 5000, you'd see a much larger upgrade when you do that, and maybe be more satisfied over time.
Yeah,
Skipping generations always seems like a good idea. Like if you're, especially if you're starting at the high end and going down a tier, always seems like the right choice.
Right.
Well, yeah. So with that, let's talk about the 4070 Ti. Reviews are out. Like Alex said, the DF doesn't have a review up, and actually, we know of a couple other outlets that do not have a review up because of some hardware issues going into it. So, but there are some out there. I did watch some videos. Friend of the show, Steve over at Gamers Nexus, had a video. Steve at Hardware Unboxed had a video, and actually, Wendell from Level 1 Techs had a video. Anytime I get to watch Wendell, he just he lulls me to sleep. Not okay. That sounded bad. He just such a gentle, kind man. I just like feel like I'm like in his arms, just like hearing him talk about GPUs. And it doesn't put me to sleep because he's boring. It just puts me to sleep because I love his voice. Oh no! Actually, never mind. He reviewed the Radeon. I'm sorry. Guess what? There's multiple GPUs that just launched this week. So we're talking about
cards.
Oh my God! Yeah. We'll get to Wendell in a little bit then. So yeah, the overall takeaway. Oh, and I guess I should say, just like last week, Brad is out. He's got some personal stuff going on, so we did not have a review up of the 4070 Super. He is still out. Actually, I think maybe he came back today or maybe tomorrow. So he does not have a review of the 4070 Ti Super, unfortunately either. But yeah, hopefully those things will be coming. But I mean, on the whole, it looks like kind of one of those issues where the upgrade, even though on paper looks nice, it's not. It's more like, kind of the same thing, the 4070 Super, where this is kind of what it should have been. 1440p performance is still great, and there is an uplift here and there, but also it puts itself in a better spot for 4K, which is good because of the memory and the memory bus and things like that, which is nice, but it's also not. I think we were saying before the show, like the pure raster is not the uplift that a lot of people were expecting. Is that what you guys were seeing out on the internet? Is that a good summation?
From my perspective, yes. And I think actually it's just more like, okay, it is less dramatic than maybe the 4070 Super, but I would say it is what the original 4070 Ti should have been, because that was kind of also like I don't know, I feel like a lot of these we described when originally the 4000 series cars started rolling out, that in terms of price performance, the 4090 was so weirdly good looking for being ridiculously expensive, just because it actually offered like large upgrades over the previous generation, and it, like within its Halo price class, it was ridiculous. It was still very powerful, but then as you went down the stack, the amount of performance you got back for euro or dollar given out kept going down. And that one was one, especially with the original launch idea of actually naming it a 4080, right?
Yeah.
That's so it seemed really out of place at that point, and I think they had to probably budget. They had to change the price before launch a little bit, as well as that's why they changed the name. And I feel like still it wasn't in a great place after the fact, in between the 4070 and the 4080. 4080 being ridiculously expensive and just really didn't make sense to me, and it just felt like it was in an awkward place, especially with its VRAM configuration, where it could be like a 3090 and better. But then it didn't have any of the 3090's utility of being resolution agnostic, because 3090, you don't actually have to worry about VRAM considerations when turning on the good stuff the ray tracing, the path tracing. Frame generation itself also uses VRAM, for example, increases VRAM. And those are things that you honestly, for that amount of money you're giving out, you shouldn't really be feeling pressured with by 12 gigabytes, in my humble opinion, which you could technically be. So this GPU solves that issue. It brings the 4070 Ti into in a better place, and it's going to be fully replaced, unlike the 4070. The 4070 is still going to exist on market and be manufactured, but the 4070 Ti is actually being replaced. So it's a bit like the 2070 when that happened. And I think it is better, but I still wish that the price went down a little bit.
Alex, do you feel like this is to me this looks like a really great 1080p 1440p card, but maybe an iffy 4K card, especially if you like high settings and ray tracing and stuff like that? Is that fair? Or
I mean, I think you can get away still with a lot of that using DLSS, but I think it's also one where you almost feel like you should be obliged to spend more money and get something better, just because you can actually get a good deal better GPU in the upcoming future. I think when that 4080 Super launches, which is going to be how much more expensive is it in terms of MSRP? It's still it's a big hop up there. Still.
Yeah, it's still a big hop. Yeah. I guess I should check Newegg prices, because I haven't checked Newegg prices this morning for all the different versions, because once again there is no Founders Edition of the Ti Super.
That's the one slightly negative thing about the cards that don't get Founders Editions, because they can sometimes add they can be like one of the few cards that are MSRP, depending upon what the board partners do. That's a whole nother question.
Yeah, I mean we have MSI Ventus, so the dual axial fan for $800, all the way up to a ROG Strix, with all the bells and whistles and RGB lighting for $950. So,
oh my goodness,
just shy of the 2080 Super, or I'm sorry, 4080 Super.
Imagine that.
That's like you're getting much less of a card. It seems like at that just on paper. I don't know what the 4080 Super benches are like at this point. So,
yeah.
Will be coming soon, I imagine. But you can't comment on that. I don't believe.
Of course.
But I believe in this case, in terms of, I could use this card for 4K. And in fact, I'm going to be in upcoming videos focusing a little bit more on using a smaller card for 4K at one point to just prove a point about something. But at the same time, if you're going to be investing that much money, I feel like you should probably go 1440p with this GPU just to get the most out of it. It's kind of like a 4090 at 1440p, if you understand what I mean by that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so the other thing, I guess I closed Newegg and I shouldn't have, but I'm wondering how much stock of the original 4070 Ti is there, and at what point does it make sense to be like, oh, you know what, actually the 4070 Ti is dipping in price. You know what, actually, I mean, at least on Newegg in the US, there is still quite a bit of stock left, but some of these are not dipping. I mean, the lowest one I'm seeing is $769. So,
that isn't good at all.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't want to get that, for that price. So,
I mean, it's a dramatically less like the memory bus width increased on the Ti Super, and the memory configuration both increased, and I think they jacked up the clock speed some. Is that the GPU clock speed? Is that just a smidge?
Yeah.
So
just enough to really jack up the power consumption. It seemed like from some of the reviews I think Steve at Gamers Nexus was doing some power consumption tests on it, and it was kind of remarkable how much more juice it draws under load and spikes to than even the 4070 Ti, which is roughly equivalent. I don't know. It's both of, like, I mean, we're gonna talk about this in a minute, but both of these cards seem like weird in-betweener cards that mainly exist because they continue slicing up. Like it used to be in the good old days, there were three cards. There was the fast card, there was the medium card, and there was the slow card. And now we have the fast slow card and the slow card, in addition to the slow medium card. And then we have the medium slow medium, medium, and medium fast. I don't know why I know why, but I kind of wish that we didn't
capitalism,
have
baby.
An enormous differentiation between all the different parts that are available now.
Yeah, it's I think the reason why that happened, we all can have our own theories. I would love to actually hear why you all think that started originally. But I think it was kind of the time around 70 Radeon 7900, I believe, and that was NVIDIA GTX 680. It's kind
Yeah.
of like there was like I think NVIDIA realized their mid-range chip was almost as powerful as the high-end AMD ATI one at the time, and they realized we can create an entirely new market segment by doing this. And I think that then split up things. That's when you got the the GTX 780 and 780 Ti, and then the Titan X Black, or I don't know, it was Titan XP, was it?
Well,
I forget which one it was. One of the Titans. It was one of the Titans. It's basically, there was a lot of segmentation that occurred right as that generation happened. For the first time ever, there was like an Ultra Halo product. There was a cut down version of that, and it was the first time we saw that in such a big way. That I think it hasn't recovered ever since the market. It's just kind of let it down that path.
I mean, it's funny because they have kind of been I mean, they started doing it before then, but they've gone back and forth with it based on how their position in the market was, right? Like prior to the first, I guess, DX8 cards, even they had they rolled out MX and TIs in the
Right.
GeForce 3 and 4 lines, and kind of first tasted that forbidden fruit, and then they had a couple of bad years there and backed off to just, hey, we have the fast one that's not as fast as the other guy's card. But I mean, it is because I think it also helps the OEMs a lot because it gives them more flexibility on how to compete at Best Buy in the most confusing way possible for people who buy desktop PCs at Best Buy, which I have to imagine at this point is a small market, but I don't know.
I think you'd probably be surprised.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but I also think that, I mean, if there were 3 cards and the top end is a 4090, it's $1,600, well, plus, right? Like you don't have much money in there, when in the past, you're talking about, $100 separating them. Now you're talking about hundreds of dollars separating each one of them. So, I mean, to a certain degree, in some ways, it almost feels like the jump in some of these is even bigger than you would expect, right? Moving from like a 4060 Ti to a 4070 Super, is still hundreds of dollars, depending on which models you get or whatever. So like, where I feel like in the past, I remember GPU shopping even during like the 9 or the 10 series, where it was like, can I spend maybe $60 more to bump up to the next one? Now it's like, oh no, can I spend over $100 to bump up to the next one?
And they, unfortunately, due to the way they differentiate the cards, which is something that Will also just talked about, the gradations. Some of the gradations are less interesting than the others because they have so many caveat points in them. Like the 4060. I actually think the 4060 is okay on a certain level, but then you look at the 8 gigabytes of VRAM and you say, like, once again, one thing I dislike about GPUs is ones that, like, they disincentivize you from using them in a specific role. And I feel like the 4060 does that with its 8 gigabytes. It says, do not even want to try and use this card at 1440p. It's going to be a lot more challenging. And I don't like that at all, because then it makes you want to upsell the next card, which actually is quite more expensive, like you're saying, Adam, like the 4070 Super now, or 4070.
And the NVIDIA stuff, especially because of how good DLSS is, like it hides a lot of crimes on the low end SKUs. So, like,
for better or worse.
Point,
I mean, it's nice that it's there, right? But you also don't want to just hang on it and have that be the saving grace.
Yeah, but it feels like they looked at, hey, we can put 8 gigs of memory on this thing and make it perform the way we want at 1440p, so that we have a reason to sell a better card for 1440p people. Which is, like, I mean, it's capitalism, baby. But as you said, Adam, but like, it feels bad, like, as the person who always loved finding the that one weird part that you could get either the 50% overclock on, or you could put a better cooler on, or whatever. They're aware that those things exist, and since the 1080, we kind of haven't seen one of those in a minute.
Right. Really.
Yeah. So I think we're just like, okay, cool. Glad it's there. But also, it's not. We're not like running into the streets and being like, yay, finally.
And it's weird. It's always weird to compare these inside the generations because people don't go out and buy a 4060 and then or 4070 Ti and then upgrade to the 4070 Ti Super. This is hey, we're making the 4070 Ti better so that people are holding on to 2080 Ti's are eyeballing this and thinking, oh, maybe that's the point that I'm going to upgrade to. Right, this is finally good enough for me to make the jump. It's before the 5000 series comes out, so they can NVIDIA double dips instead of single dips on those people.
Well, and I mean, we talked about this before the show, but I think in some ways it's kind of the same thing with 14th gen. A lot of people are like, what the hell? 14th gen is literally 13th gen. Why would they even do it? And in my review of that, I was like, you know what? To a certain degree, it's a fresh car smell. You know, NVIDIA's rolling into 2024, and guess what? They got that fresh car. You want that fresh car? You don't want that last year car. That one stinks. You know, you got that ooh, look, this 4070 Super. Oh, it's got that fresh car smell.
It does smell good.
Look, Adam, as somebody who has a 13th gen with an iffy memory controller and works in Unreal, I'm looking at those 14.9s real close and thinking maybe that better memory controller is worth the upgrade. So I don't know.
Right? Yeah. I mean,
what issues are you having? Actually, I'm very curious.
I can't play Fortnite at full clocks. I have to bump the multiplier down to 52x because it triggers EAC. The memory gets just corrupted enough to trigger the easy anti-cheat and crashes it with no dump. Yeah,
RAM
it's amazing.
stability.
It is. I can bake light maps on Unreal. I can do everything else. Fortnite, any EAC game will crash it. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
That's
anyway,
ridiculous. I'm sorry.
That's the price of the bleeding edge, Alex. This is what we do.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the bleeding edge, let's move over to the Radeon RX 7600 XT.
That's a big boy.
Yeah,
that's a huge card.
Yeah, this is the XFX Speedster Quick 309 of the 7600 XT. You know, that's the other weird trend I've noticed too, is that like this card does not need 3 fans. I mean, I guess if you want it to be as cold and quiet as possible, cool. But you know, this card could definitely get away with less fans. So
you'll probably get away with a blower, actually.
Yeah. So I do wonder. Like, I feel like that's another trend all around of like you know, of all GPUs, not just AMD ones, but just companies being like, hey, what if we stick 3 fans on a you know, $300 card? You know, makes you feel better. It doesn't make you. Actually, I do wonder if like subconsciously this makes you feel like you got a better card. Oh, like if you have a really small one, like, you know, you're like, oh, you know, I paid $300 for this, but no, I paid $300 for this.
Look, if you bought a GPU without a giant shroud and a bunch of fans on it these days, you got the weenie GPU, Adam. That's there's definitely some of that. I'm sure there's data in the marketing departments at NVIDIA and AMD that show that is the way people believe.
Yeah. Well, speaking of data, yeah, once again, the reviews of that hit this morning. There's where I watched Wendell and felt like he was rocking me to sleep so gently. And Steve, I watched Steve. He did not sleep a wink between all these GPU reviews. So he got that video up as well. And interesting enough, so I mean, I think everyone kind of knew this from the announcement, but essentially this is a 7600 non-XT with double the RAM. I mean, a slight clock increase, you know, things here and there, but for the most part, this is them being like, oh, hey, instead of calling the 7600 an 8 gig and a 16 gig version, what if we just call this the XT, and the XT has double the VRAM?
Right.
Yeah, actually, first question, is that better or worse? Would you rather have AMD do what NVIDIA did and say, hey, we got the 4060 8 gig and 4060 16 gig? Or have 2 separate models that are essentially the same GPU, just one, like the non-XT has 8 gig and the XT has 16 gig?
I love having separate models because when in 4 years and 5 years, when you're having games crash because they don't have video memory on the small config card, it makes tech support for the poor people sitting and answering questions on the Steam forums so much easier. The number of times I've had to ask somebody if they have a 1063 gig or a 1063 6 gig is too damn high.
That's a really good point, actually. Right. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Historically, it hasn't been that way. Like back in the old days, really old days, like you could have 16 and 8 gigabyte model, sorry, 16 and 8 megabyte models of the same thing. And, you know, that changed at some point in time. And I actually do agree with you. The 1060, but when they do that, those are such underhanded things. I've always thought. I thought the 1063 gigabyte really shouldn't have been named that. I also think the weird 3050 thing that is apparently going to come into existence at some point in the future, you two might have heard about as well. I also don't think that should exist. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of different memory configurations under the same naming.
It's really confusing. The big problem is the people who are buying cards in that price range are often less educated than the people that are willing to spend money on $1,000, $1,500 GPU, and so they're trained to think, oh, the big number is the one that matters. I'm buying the BMW 3 Series or the BMW 5 Series, right? And so as a result, they're like, oh, this one is $100 cheaper than the same one with the same big number on it. Why I'm going to save $100, and then they really are going to have problems, and like probably not next year, probably not this year, the year after, and the year after that, it'll be a larger issue. So,
well, yeah. So one of the things, I mean, the reviews are what you would expect. Like we can kind of recap some of them, but at the same point, you know, you're essentially paying what I think $60 more, and you're getting the double VRAM. You know, maybe some slight, you know, FPS increases in games, but it, you know, nothing exciting kind of thing. So between the 4060 8 and 16 gig, and then now this 7600 with an 8 and 16 gig, I think maybe we're starting to see like, oh, okay, how much VRAM do we actually need? Like 8 is too small, but 16 is too much. Is that
this is true?
Yeah,
that
right?
sounds very reasonable. In fact, for this almost card, I mean, I don't like, once again, saying that some GPUs like a 1080p one, but for the people who will be buying this in the price range, they probably have a 1080p monitor, so it's very adept to target games and benchmarking with that. It's not going to be getting much utility at 1080p from 16 gigabytes. What it would have had the card been designed differently in the first place as a 12 gigabyte SKU. And it might have been more reasonable at that point.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, obviously it's the bus width is a thing too. People started talking about, but like, so I don't know how to formulate this question, but I like listening to you, Alex, talk about like comparing, hey, how much VRAM do you actually need? How much is addressable by the consoles? How much can, you know, you overspec on a PC, and taking away, and we're just talking about gaming here, because I think the other side of it is people are like, oh, for the stuff that needs big VRAM, like that's awesome. Like I actually did some benchmarks that, a huge benchmark thing that I've been working on for a while. Is that, in like DaVinci Resolve, you can definitely see the difference between like a 4060 Ti 8 and 16, even though for gaming, like, you know, it's not worth it, but maybe for, you know, certain tasks or AI workloads or something like that. So take that out of the equation, because I feel like that's kind of a side discussion.
If you care about that, you're probably not buying a card in this price range, would be my guess, is the other thing.
Maybe. I don't know. Whatever people can afford, right?
Yeah.
But for gaming specifically, do you still feel like, you know, especially now that we've seen this, 12 gigs is like the min spec, what it should be going forward?
I feel like that should have been the medium range mid spec this time around, and I was disappointed that the 4060 was 8 gigabyte, because the 3060, its predecessor, was a 12 gigabyte GPU, because NVIDIA was originally most likely trying to sell another 6 gigabyte card when it originally came out, and they panicked before market and turned it into a 12 one on that same bus, which is, you know, you just double up the VRAM, the amount. That's what you do. I feel like that was a very big missed opportunity, and 12 could have been a perfect standard to go forward, because with the way console ports, like you were saying, Adam, there are going to be done in the near future, and we've seen it with a number of ports in the last year. Developers, if they're not going to take the time to make good versions of the game in terms of the textures, on an 8 GB GPU because they just don't, because they don't have the money, the production time, or I don't maybe the technical knowledge, depending upon the developer, then you can get a very bad experience on an 8 GB GPU. I would hope that isn't the case, but you could have spec'd yourself out of it very easily if they had brought out 12 GB cards that were very convincing. I think last time around, AMD actually had that with the 6700 series, which was 12 GB. They actually had that. And then they kind of dropped it when they went into 7000 series. And, as the story was with NVIDIA, they price classed the cards so strangely that this 4060 was awkward, and its extra 8 GB version, the 16 GB one, was also awkward. And then upgrading to a 4070 was an entirely different price class anyway. So I'd say 12 GB would have been amazing, and I really wish both of them had done it in the mid-range price class.
Well, and what's gonna push it up next? Because I mean, obviously 12. If you feel like 12 is like, hey, that's kind of the minimum. Mm-hmm. When would we go up next? Is that another console refresh? Do you think that's just games are like constantly always going to be using more VRAM? Like what's the impetus to push forward?
I actually probably do think it will be the next generation of consoles, because I don't see, unless the mid-range performance in ray tracing and path tracing games dramatically increases in the next 4 years.
I mean, at the mid-range, it would have to be ray tracing, like current gen ray tracing games that are just sucking up a lot more memory. But
that's it.
The current consoles are 16 gigs, right? So we're not going to see, and it's shared. So we're not going to see. I don't think they're going to push beyond unless somebody is, unless somebody pays for somebody to go out and build some custom stuff that's essentially PC exclusive, like it's happened with Cyberpunk.
Yeah, right. That's the thing. Like, it needs those PC exclusive things, and that's where it becomes more interesting. I think we're going to see more of that over time. But whether or not the mid-range user is going to want to even take advantage of those features always is an entirely different question, versus a lot of people who do use DLSS, like you just talked about earlier. And that's the one that isn't about sucking up more memory. It's actually just about getting a good image quality and more frames. So.
Yeah, and we have a Street Trout in the chat saying, I do really hope the market correction and reality checks hit these GPU companies hard. I do wonder how much of these, kind of mid-cycle refreshes or like filling out the rest of the lineup kind of stuff is because consumers were going out and being like, I'm not going to buy this new card because it doesn't have enough VRAM, or because it's about pricing. I tend to feel like most consumers will look at pricing first and try to figure out what they can get within their budget kind of thing. So it's more like, oh, we're probably not selling enough cards. We need to kind of readjust the stack to get better specs at a lower price. It's not necessarily specifically about the VRAM thing. It's kind of more holistic than that. I don't know. What do you guys think?
We talked about this a little bit last week. I think that there's, a lot of us went into a time warp somewhere in March of 2020, and it still feels like we're in the third or fourth year of 2020 right now. And
the 2020 that never stops.
Yeah, in 2020, I had a 2080 Ti that ripped, and I think a lot of people, just anecdotally talking to people who were reporting tech problems on the Anacrusis store, wanted to know why they weren't getting 150 frames a second in a game that came out, in December with their 2080s. Look at their 2080 and think, man, I have a badass PC, and this is top of the line hardware. And at this point, they're running cards that are 5 years old. And I think that NVIDIA and AMD are both trying to they're trying to make the bait just right to pull those people in. They're casting more and more lines, and they're like I said, trying to get those people to come in and buy new cards now. And it's hard because what they're doing is taking a customer who bought what they thought was the best card they could get, and they're saying, hey, you now qualify for a third tier card, the bad version of the third tier card. And that's a tough sell, right? So NVIDIA's kind of hosed themselves with their renaming scheme, I think, is what I'm my take.
Yeah, it doesn't feel
the ego better.
What?
Almost they could have appealed to the ego of the consumer better with better naming, is almost what you're saying.
Yeah, right? I mean, when they renamed the Titans 4090s and made that the high watermark for the 3090 4090, made that the high watermark for the generation, then what they're saying is, hey, you have to spend $1,600 to get the good one now, when people had been trained by 1080s and 2080s that you spent $500 or $600 to get the good one. And that's they're good for them for trying, I guess. I'm not an NVIDIA shareholder, but if I was, I'd be really stoked at that. As somebody who buys video cards, I'm less enthusiastic.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, isn't there like an equivalent in the gaming world where it's like if you debuff something, it feels worse than if you just raise everything else up to counter, right? Like,
I think that's
like if you have a weapon that's like, doing real bad, like if you cut its performance, it makes those people feel crappy. But if you just bring everyone else's performance up, it makes you feel like,
MMO inflation.
Right.
Yeah, the idea is it's better to buff everything than to nerf one thing that's really popular.
Because I feel like that's what kind of happened here. Like on paper, NVIDIA is trying to say, hey, listen, look how much better a 4070 is compared to a 2080 Ti from 5 years ago, which was a flagship card. Like, oh my God, it's awesome. But also, I've seen plenty of people be like, man, I used to buy X class, 70 class, 80 class, 60 class, whatever. Now, for the price I'm getting, I have to, I'm buying the class one lower down, which on paper, it still is going to be really fast and really good for what their needs are. But that just doesn't feel good, like, on, I don't know, like, as as a purchaser. So
a lot of people also look at these, and it's right now the case with NVIDIA GPUs specifically, where depending upon the version of the die and the size of the die, the price class used to be different and they used to be named differently. Like the 70 became what was the 50 class became the 60, and what was the 60 class became the 70 in terms of die size and all these things, or like the 8103 versus the 8104, etc. Like these things changed. And I think that was very purposeful on NVIDIA's side. I think they did have market pressures there in terms of how much it costs to actually probably manufacture and get the fab space for it. I think that is a reality in and of itself. But man, Will, you're right. The Halo tier card, that Titan card, used to be actually not a good price performance buy at all.
No, it was terrible.
It was the bad one. It was the bad one.
And,
it was if you had the money, right? You're like, hey, what? I've got the money. I know it doesn't perform that much better, but whatever, F it. I got the money, so.
I had a friend who was speccing on a machine. He was like, should I get this 3090? I was like, no, absolutely not. You play stuff at 1080p because you stream, and you're never going to see benefit from this card because you don't play competitive stuff. So you don't care about like greater than 144 hertz. You don't care about this. You're not doing machine learning. You're not doing video editing. There's nothing you're going to do that's going to hit this card, and all it's going to do is heat up your office so that you have to crack the door and turn on the air conditioning earlier. And he was like, oh, okay, great. And got a 3080 Ti and was thrilled with it for a really long time. It's a tough, I mean, on the other hand, they did make the overall offering clearer and made let you know where the Titan level cards fit into the overall scheme. I don't know. It just feels off. The whole thing feels off. So,
well, actually, here's a good analogy from a friend of the show, Retro Sean, said it's kind of like how games have ultra settings, and nobody really wants to turn it down to high, but you're going to get a performance boost by not losing too much.
Better.
Right? Yeah. And if anything, that's why I love the videos you do, just to, maybe talk about how awesome your videos are for a second, is that it's like, oh, you actually just break it down and be like, hey, you know what? Like, you could turn this to medium. And I can attest there's certain times where you're like, oh, you know what? Like, look, from ultra to medium, it's not that big of a jump visually, but the performance wise is a huge jump. I'll be like, oh, medium. Oh, I'm not a medium. Oh, you know what? Actually, he's kind of right. That is a nice performance hit. And you know what? I don't really notice it. So that's why I appreciate what you do. And kind of like, look, just look at it. It's okay. It's medium, but you're getting 10 extra frames out of it. So
I love that too. I mean, over time it does change. I think so. There was a recent question in a DF Direct. I love doing that, but there's a recent question in a DF Direct saying like, one of your recent videos, it was Alan Wake 2 optimized settings. I kind of said like, okay, there's this game actually has like real ultra settings. Like what I would describe as ultra settings, the time like when Crysis came out, like where the ultra setting in this game is path tracing. It requires an entirely different tier of GPU to enable it. Medium settings are not going to look the same. And this is an unfortunate consequence of being just like, you're like on the bleeding edge of where technology is. So it won't
Which is
happen all
fun.
the time, but
Which is fun. Like it is nice to have that, right? You know, because
and it's fine.
Aspirational. Like, oh man, I can't wait to have a rig that just like blows Alan Wake 2 out of the water.
Yeah, that's the fun stuff, but I guess people get angry about it. Alan Wake 2 was one of the clear examples recently where they really maybe should have appealed to vanity, almost like Will was talking about earlier, where they named what are their low and medium settings. They had named them low and medium, and everyone freaked out when it released because they thought that means the game was going to look bad, but low and medium in that game looks like the ultra in something like Call of Duty. So it's just it's a hard thing.
I did have this thing too because a part of my benchmarking suite is Horizon Zero Dawn, and I liked how they have original quality, which they don't come out and say it, but you're essentially saying console quality, right? The original one that came out on console. So like I actually do wonder if going forward, would you, and we're getting way off topic here, maybe I should save this for later. But like I wonder, like, would it be interesting to have in the settings like, hey, here's console quality? Or
is
like
that PS4 console or PS5 console though? That's the question, right? Because that was a cross-gen game, right?
That's the original 2017 one.
Yeah. The original one was PS4.
Okay,
yeah. So
that I'd love that too, and I advocated for it just because it's like it gives people in the audience who don't want to either watch a video online about optimized settings or touch styles and settings in a menu. It gives them just a great idea how to start the game. And actually one thing that I like, and it's not done too often, is actually all of Hideo Kojima's games on PC, whenever you start them up, like Metal Gear Solid and Death Stranding, Metal Gear Solid 5, they always default to whatever console settings are. Actually, it's a little hidden thing that they do. It's very cool. And so people who don't know, they just play the game actually at console settings.
Speaking of console, Elena Yee has showed up. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. That was a Gordon level joke.
I did time it perfectly, right? I heard Will say, that's a PS5 game, right? I'm like, no.
Well, welcome, Elena. We're here talking about GPUs. The latest. Well, we got off topic for a second there, but $330 GPU. First question I have, going back to what we were talking about earlier, do you think it makes you feel better that if you get a $330 GPU that you get the bigger shroud and the 3 fans, even though you don't really need it?
Are you asking me specifically, or is that a group question?
No. Yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier. So I was curious for you, somebody who is like, I'm assuming, but if you're like, it'd be a better deal to like take $20 off and just get the 2 fan version because, like I don't really care about, like it. Oh wow, this has got a bigger shroud and it doesn't really need it.
I mean, do you want my take, or do you want the cynic's take, or do you want the
give them all?
Yeah.
So I would say the first one is the cynic's take, which is like, well, how else are they going to charge $330 if they don't improve the shroud and the aesthetics and what the perceived value is, right? For me personally, I would say that I like having both as an option, honestly. Like if they had like a 2 fan version, because then that way, if you're building in a smaller case, then that opens up your possibilities. But then for somebody who is, maybe more temperature sensitive or can have concerns about like ambient temperature and like all that kind of stuff, then maybe it's not necessary, but then it makes them feel better that they have that as an option.
Yeah, options are good.
Mm-hmm. They have one that they sell as the silent version. That's what I'm going to sign up for, it turns out.
Yeah, that too.
Well, yeah. I'm real bummed that I didn't get a photo with it, but did you see the Gigabyte had a 4060, like a half size 4060 that they talked about late last year? It was it was just like little tiny. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cute.
They're little.
Yeah.
Half the size, twice the price. That's how that usually works, right?
I mean, if it's with mini ITX, right? Everything's more expensive.
Yeah, I dig it. Yeah. Any other notes on the 7600 XT? I feel like we were going off topic because there's not really too much to talk about on this one.
Just in general, RDNA 3 to me is a bit disappointing. I expected more of it in terms of architecture advancements. So I'm actually very excited to see whatever the heck RDNA 4 is versus 3, whether they're going to push in NVIDIA and Intel's direction, and also what it means for their mid-range cards at that point in the future. So I'm excited actually more for future cards than what is currently coming out.
Well, and Robert Lawrence asked how it compares to the A770. Once again, we don't have our testing suite up, but to summate what Steve from Gamers Nexus was talking about was like, I mean, it compares. It's a good comparison point, yes, but also the inherent Intel Arc experience still requires maybe a little bit more patience, maybe a little bit more understanding of what's going on. Because if you do run into a problem, you know that you're going to need a little bit more knowledge. That with the Arc cards as opposed to the other cards, they have come a long way. They've come a long way for damn sure. But yeah, I mean, and actually, I'm looking on Newegg right now. Once again, Newegg, just U.S. sales, but you can get an A770 16 gig for $300. It's the ASRock Challenger version. So like
that's so cheap,
right? I mean, and that's
16
like,
gigabyte
yeah. I mean, it is still a damn good card and something to look at. I mean, I feel like in that $300 range, whether you're looking at Radeon 6000, Radeon 7000. Intel Arc, you know, there's some NVIDIA options too, old and new. Like I feel like in that range there is some good options to look at. And I mean, performance-wise, I mean, for 1080p gaming, like you're still getting, you know, some damn good performance. It's just all about like nitpicking, right? And just be like, oh, okay, do I want more VRAM? Do I want NVIDIA features? Do I want to tinker around a little bit more with Arc? Yeah, so...
Alex, do you think the VRAM is going to become more important as we see more current gen console, like not like we're just starting to see the ports come that are PS5 native instead of cross gen, and I wonder if you think that's going to have an impact on the RAM, like if that's going to hit the 8 gig card people specifically hard.
I guess I think it will. Yes, it's going to be on a per game basis though. I think Unreal Engine titles, which there's going to be a lot of, are going to be fine, because they have a very specific way. You know, you use Unreal, like they're using virtual texturing. Nanite itself is virtual geometry, so it's trying to use as much, getting as much detail with as little memory usage as possible. So I think that's going to be fine. But a thing I've seen recently, and I thought the game was really well, amazingly optimized, was actually Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. But if you had an 8 gigabyte GPU, the game actually didn't allow you to adjust texture settings. They were doing it automatically, and that would give you, the game ran fine, didn't have any hitches or anything like that on an 8 gigabyte GPU, but occasionally textures would not load in correctly.
Like you see real low map levels. It's hard to say, it turns out, but yeah,
you'd see that, and that's something where you don't have any option at that point. And if games start not giving you great options, which ends up happening as these gens go by, I think then you could end up having like visually not too great experiences on 8 gigabytes.
Is it UE5 or 4? Do you know?
Avatar? That's its own engine. It's
its own thing. Okay. It's the UV thing.
It's Snowdrop is the name of that one. That's the name of the engine. Snowdrop.
Also, I bought that game because I heard you guys talking about it on DF Direct and have that secret unobtainium mode or whatever. And I load in the game, and the very first thing, it loads you into the story, you know, and you start playing or whatever. And I hit escape, and I go into the video settings, and I was like, wait, there's no benchmark in here. What are they talking about? I totally, man, I just wasted my money on this. Smash escape and get out of there. And then later I didn't realize, you can only engage the benchmark from the main menu, not in the game.
That's actually a user experience pet peeve of me. I don't know how you all feel about it. When the game starts playing without letting you actually adjust it before.
I hate that. I hate that. Yeah.
It's what the kids crave these days. You just want to get right in the game. We're trained for instant gratification.
Those kids. Kids mess it all up.
I don't know.
Elena, do you like just going straight into the action?
I mean, you're talking to a console gamer, friends.
Oh, you know what? Good point. Yeah, because on console, nobody's stopping to give you like, oh, hey, what resolution do you want to set this to?
That is a bit of a joke, but I do find it annoying when I don't get the chance to at least get I would call lay of the land, right? Like I at least want to see what's available to me. Um, it has that same vibe for me as when you're just like thrown into a cutscene automatically and you just can't escape it. I don't enjoy that.
Right.
Well, speaking of young, and a friend of the show, Ginevra 1G1, has given us a bunch of super chats. No questions in here, just comments. So I want to quickly read some of them. 12 gig 4080 would have been the first ever 60 class card with an 80, with the GTX 680 and 1080 runner up due to 60 class die with 7080 membus.
Right.
Yeah. What pushed me fully into APUs was seeing the 300 millimeter 192-bit 3060 for $330, getting replaced with a 300 millimeter 192-bit card for $900. Yeah. And just as a reminder, the 16 gig A770 has a similar manufacturing cost as the 4080. Maybe the A770 is selling at a loss, maybe not. Yeah. All good.
Probably.
Notes. But yeah, let's move on before we're getting too deep in here, out of the weeds. This next topic is actually one that Elena brought up when I was talking about stuff to talk about, and she's like, let's talk about some trends. Now, this is different than predictions, because last year, we put on paper, we always do that at the end of the year, what we predict is going to happen in the coming years. So we're not going to rehash that or get into it too much, but I think it is good to at least talk about like overall trends. Where do we hope to see the PC industry move this year? Where would we like the PC industry to move this year? Let's start with Will. Will, is there anything trend wise that you're like, you know what, I would love to see that this year?
I'd love to see people pay more attention to power and heat. Like I think I would much rather have a 13900 1x 15900, whatever the number is going to be next, class part that is idles cooler and runs under moderate load cooler, with the ability to spike up, but with a like 20%, 30%, like less wattage, less heat in my office is all I really want at this point. Like I can't get enough air conditioning in here, it turns out. And same thing on the GPU side. Like it's great that we're looking at, hey, you can pull 1600 watts out of the wall in North America on a 120 volt 15 amp circuit, probably. But just because we can doesn't mean we should. I'm going to say, like, this is a,
Have you met Gordon?
I love Gordon. This is Gordon and I've known Gordon for 20 plus years. We've differed on many, many things over the years. This is when I was like, hey, my phone is as fast as my computer for sending emails. He looked at me and just shook his head in disgust and walked away. So,
Can't blame him.
That sounds on brand for Gordon.
That is one nice thing I do like about the 40 series. It is definitely more power efficient.
Way more.
Yeah,
My goodness.
yeah. So like,
and it seems like AMD makes progress on the CPU side there. Maybe I have somebody in chat said I needed a Threadripper, which maybe is the right answer, but
I mean, also
It actually might be for you.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you're doing more production stuff these days.
it turns out when you bake lights, I can make the whole house warm in my small North San Francisco Bay Area house. So.
What about you, Alex? What kind of things are you looking forward to in 2024, or hoping people pay attention to? Trends.
Well, one thing you were talking about was you had your 3-fan large shrouded 7600 XT right there, and I think that's a ridiculously ugly GPU.
I mean, like compare it to the 4070 Super, right?
I know,
Like,
which is so much more, which is such a better GPU.
It's thinner.
I just want to
too.
hold this up.
Yeah.
I just want to hold this up. I have one too, and I would hold up another RTX GPU, but there is actually an MSI. I posted about on Twitter. There's an MSI RTX. Forget which class of card it is. Might have been a 4080 Super. It was one of the ones they showed off at CES. And it's actually taking hints from the Founders Edition in terms of styling.
Oh,
single
it's
fan,
like kind of metal, and it has like the little notches in it. Oh yeah. I
edged
love
heat
that one.
sink. It looks
Super
beautiful.
cool. Yeah.
And I think a return to just a little bit more subdued aesthetics would be nice as a choice, and it would also set like a precedent. I think in terms of, I don't know what they're going to price it as. I actually hope it's not too expensive.
I think it was pretty heavy though. Ooh.
Oh
when
no!
I picked it up,
well,
I was like, oh boy, this is
yeah.
heavy,
well, never
heavy.
mind. I was hoping that there would be a return to simple aesthetics and simple manufacturing that isn't just like a lot of plastic on everything and a lot of LEDs. I was hoping for that, but maybe that's just a foregone conclusion for me. And the other thing is, I'm hoping for, in general, that people this year, when PC versions of games come out, that there's like a bit more understanding at first and not so much overreacting. Just because I cover games and software
poor
more
Alex,
than hardware.
That's so sweet. That's so innocent of you to think that the internet can change like that.
I can't wait for
How cute.
Puddlegate 2024. It's the
Yeah,
puddles
right.
are 30% less shiny here, and
I would like on both sides of the spectrum. Like I would really like if games came out more polished, but at the same time, I also hope that users would not flip out so often. That was my hope for the trend there.
I like it. I like it. All jokes aside, yes, I wish people would. Even in the hardware space, this isn't just a gaming thing.
maybe just less freaking out in general would be a lovely trend.
Yeah.
Like as a nation, as a world, as a people, we could freak out a little bit less and probably be better off.
Well, friends of the show, Liquid R and Rosh Hashan, do say the outrage pony must ride. So yeah, you can't
So
deny the
we
outrage
have-
pony.
We have agents of chaos in our chat. Got it.
Yeah. I mean,
I blame Gordon for this.
Yeah, you don't want to. I mean, come on, you don't want to deny the outrage pony a chance to ride. So that would be rude. Okay, Elena, what are some of your hopes and dreams of 2024?
I love how when I pitch this idea, I'm thinking like stark reality. What do we think's gonna
We'll get
happen?
there. No,
and you
we'll-
turned it
no,
into
no,
something hopeful and beautiful.
I wanted to start with the hopeful, and then we'll get into the reality. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's good. I'm glad you qualified that because I was about to like just dump a heap of reality on this. I would say for my hope, I would love to see a return to kind of the pre-pandemic. The companies like trying to impress us with like being on the forefront of just everything. I think that the pandemic honestly contributed to a lot of what we've seen in the past year or so, where like just even going back to like the PC port issues, I would suspect, I mean, obviously it's always been historically troublesome, but I would suspect given the rest of the industry and everything else we've seen so far, a lot of it just had to do with the fact that like everybody was working from home. They didn't like, everyone was under a lot of stress. It was just a wild time for everybody. So I'm hoping that this year is the first year where we start to see like, okay, we're starting to get back to what we used to think of as normal. And that's going to be much more exciting for us, especially those of us who are on the sidelines looking at hardware and hoping to see like, oh, you did that? Like you put that many cores in that, or you managed to, increase clock speeds, while reducing, this or that. That's really cool. Wait, I'm not supposed to be negative yet. Okay, that's my hope. So let's stop right there.
and anything with cases? Anything that you're hoping? Yeah,
Thank you for the prompt.
Yeah, well, I haven't. I mean, we haven't talked too much about the CES stuff and the rear, the backside connector stuff is obviously here to stay,
cool.
and it's definitely going to be a part of the future going forward. I've seen a lot of negativity, but I also feel like maybe you might be more hopeful on that. Or no?
Me?
Yeah.
Are you looking for somebody to actually be with you on this point? I would say that I'm neutral. I like the idea of it, but I feel like it's still so new. I kind of want to see how that shapes the approach going forward. Like, is it going to have a bumpy start? Is it going to dramatically shift the attention? Is it going to improve just annoyances that we've seen earlier? And I think I'm kind of like in a wait and see mode with it because I like the idea of it. But I don't know, maybe this is just a random quirk, but I don't mind cables. what I hate are the ones that you can't get to route cleanly so that it doesn't look wild and crazy. I kind of like maybe I don't know, because I call it analog kind of vibe to having some wires in there. I mean, those are our roots. So I don't know. It's kind of random and weird and very illogical, but that's kind of my vibe on it. Um, it just seems a little sterile when I look at the completely like no
Interesting.
cable kind of look.
You got to do a full custom water cooling loop in there then, so that A, your computer is impossible to swap hardware in and out of. But B,
Yeah.
it's going to look really cool in there. So I've always been jealous of people who have water loops because I've never been able to do that.
Yeah. So my case thing, honestly, Adam, what I'm hoping to see are more small form factor micro ATX cases. I think that's a fun combination.
Yeah, micro ATX
They are cool.
is a nice in between point. I do like it.
More
Um,
affordable.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback up for the hopes part of it. I'll piggyback off Will. Like, I mean, efficiency, power efficiency is definitely like I feel like the past 5 years or whatever is just like, hey, how much can you throw at it? More power, needs more power, you know. And Gordon's loving it for sure. I mean, I like some of these performance gains too, but yeah, the efficiency. Like, I would love to. I know that's not going to happen, but I would love the next GPUs and CPUs to be like, hey, you know what? Actually, they perform about the same, but they're like 80% more efficient. You know, like I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to happen, but like that, I'd be okay with being like, hey, you know what? All these GPUs and CPUs perform pretty damn well across the board. Let's just take a moment and appreciate it, and then cut power. But yeah, that's just me.
That's what I've always hoped for with smartphones, but it doesn't usually happen. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, no, that was the thing too, is that, like, you would think like, oh, hey, we've got these huge ass batteries and like power efficiency. They always talk about these chips being more efficient, but then yeah, it's just still, I have to plug it in at the end of the day.
Well, just leave your screen on all the time. It turns out if you have an iPhone, you turn the screen off. You set the screen to turn off when you're not using it. It's incredible battery life. It is a huge savings for literally nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And OLED's
My
definitely
goodness.
made a well. Oh, you know, going back to hopes, Alex, you were talking earlier about OLEDs. I mean, at CES, almost every vendor we went to who had some sort of, you know, monitor offering was like, "Have you checked out our OLEDs?" Like everybody was talking about OLEDs, and I know. You guys have been talking a lot about it recently too. I think even during the CES stuff about like black frame insertion, you know, and like different technologies. From one of the vendors, I don't think I'm not going to name which vendor, but they were talking about the difference between OLED and LED, like mini LED, not the micro LED stuff, but you know, they gave me the feeling that, hey, while OLED is definitely the king right now and everyone is excited for it, you know, and like we're seeing big advancements, that actually it's still advancing on a core technology that has flaws, that mini LED continues to change and advance, you know, at its core level, and that will over mini LED will still be, you know, a bigger deal in, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. That OLED is like the flash in the pan cool thing right now. But I don't know. Any insight into that? What do you think?
I mean, I think that is maybe reasonable, just because there's going to be brightness limitations with OLED, and I think with like as it goes into the really small backlights and things like that, you're gonna be able to push brightness and then localize it much better, probably than you could on most OLEDs. And one thing I think also, I use an OLED for my desktop. I do not know what type of monitors everyone uses. I use actually a television, but it's just very big. I have a very large desk. Yeah. But the one of the things is all these OLEDs actually have less than advantageous sub-pixel patterns in them, so they're not as good for Windows actually as most LEDs or LCDs televisions are, or monitors. So I think they actually are limited over time, nth degree term. But I think in the next 2-3 years, I still think we'll see a lot of really awesome OLED stuff. But then maybe it's going to go away. maybe.
A friend of the show, Coffee, mentioned like, is OLED the next plasma? Right? Everyone was super hot into plasma, and it was the cool new thing for a while, and then it was like, you know what?
Adam, I still have a plasma in my living room. Don't tell
Really?
anybody.
They're awesome.
Oh
though.
wow!
Yeah,
Actually,
it's so
didn't
good.
Brad have? Brad Shoemaker have plasma too? Wasn't that?
Co-host of the Tech Pod. We
Yeah.
bought TVs at a similar time. My wife won't. We brought an OLED in, and she looked at it and she's like, "I want the other one back." And we pulled it out of the garage and we sent the OLED back. And I was like,
Really?
"Wow."
You know, yeah.
Interesting.
I
We have a
did.
dark room and it works, so like I get it. It makes sense, but it makes me a little sad.
Well, and also
I
something-
like HDR.
Something you're more used to. Like even though like last time I upgraded my TV, like even though I knew it was a better TV in every aspect, your eyes still get used to what you've been using. So yeah, I can't hate on that.
It's another space heater in the house also, which is good.
Right.
We live down by the coast. It's cold.
You know
Whatever.
that was something weird I did see on a lot of the OLEDs is that they're getting thick backsides. You know, like
Really?
the
Yeah.
actual back. I was surprised. Like a lot of them, I would look on the back and it would have like a good chunk and like cooling fans and stuff like that. And I was like, whoa, what?
I think that's a new feature to actually boost their brightness because they had an issue, I believe, based upon like a heatsink thing with like full screen brightness. Like if you had like half the screen being white, the other side would dim, the whole thing would dim. And I think that was the thing to counteract one of the brightness issues was actually a heat issue, if I recall. I think if you've ever watched, my goodness, my brain is blanking. It's one of the big TV channels on YouTube. Vincent. What's his name?
Oh.
Sorry.
I don't want
I'm
to
sorry. My brain is totally
No
off.
worries.
It's getting late.
I hate names.
By
Yeah.
the way, he talked about this before and it was fascinating, but OLED also had like a brightness uniformity issue for a long time in regards to this.
Yeah. Anyway, we don't need to go into this, but I'm interested in OLED for monitors. I have a 1080p 360 LCD on my desk that I use as my primary monitor for games, and I would love to get something that's comparable that looks better than the 1080p 360 hertz LCD.
The chat says HD TV test with Vincent Teo.
Thank you.
Thank you. See, that's the one nice thing about doing it live. The chat'll correct you.
Yeah.
Live fact
I don't have
correction.
to embarrass
Love it.
myself. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So now, I mean, any more like hopeful pie in the sky hopes and dreams for 2024 in the PC industry?
You know what I would love to see on every motherboard shipped high to low, top to bottom is hey, this is the settings. It's going to be pretty good and be real stable for almost everyone.
Right.
Like, hey, here's the just give me an idiot button, please. That's all I ask. Run the memory at the XMS speed. You know, it's a simple request. JJ, if you're listening, you know, get them on it over there. It's all I want.
You just want I don't want the bigger bar better. I want stability bar better.
I would like to be bigger bar close to the best, but real stable is much better.
Actually, you know what? That would be funny in the easy mode on a BIOS. There's just like overclock and then stability. You're like, nope, hit stability.
Well, because the easy mode is usually the JEDEC speed, right? So you're getting like 5133 or something on DDR5 that you probably paid a boatload of money to get way faster RAM, and then like the number of times I search what does, and then the line in the BIOS that tells that some obscure feature 99% of people use that BIOS has never heard of. And I get that it matters to people who are doing extreme overclocking, but you know, they're selling, these are mass market boards. It's not like we're talking about $800 motherboards that 5,000 people buy. We're talking, you know, when you're in that mass market, please build the BIOSes for the mass market. I guess maybe that's the right way to phrase this. That's the thing. Is this negative or positive? I don't even know anymore. I can't tell.
Well, I will say on a recent meeting with JJ from Asus, he was talking about like motherboard, you know, features in there, and you know, part of it is like, oh my god, there's so much stuff in there, it's hard to navigate in. But there was one interesting feature called Dim Flex, which you set a temperature or stability target, and it dynamically tunes the frequency, like without having a reboot or anything. Like so, it
like
has,
a GPU, like a modern GPU.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
Which is
So
better,
yeah, it's
arguably.
called
Yeah.
Dim Flex. I don't know. I don't remember exactly which boards it's in, but I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's kind of an interesting little feature. But also, it's one of those things where it's a feature that is buried, in a million menus.
What's the scale? What's the number on attached to stability? Is it like 0 to 100%? Like 100% of calculations or 0% of calculations, or is it?
He did say there's also an optimism scale to say, hey, you know what, like actually I want to, I see what you're saying, but I also want it a little bit more stable, or I want to run it a little more close to the edge.
Wow.
So it looks like a cool feature for sure. I haven't messed around with it, but yeah. Anyway, features.
Wow.
Motherboards have a lot of features.
Wait, if we're doing pie in the sky stuff, can I just put like recycle and push forward what I've said like for years now, which is, can we please standardize front panel pins on motherboards? Can we please?
It's the
Just
perfect time
finally-
to do it, right? Like if we're gonna move everything to the back of the board, just
Just tell
standardize
me.
it when you do. Then you're
Yes.
done. Yeah.
Everyone's so caught up in like, let's not show any wires. Can we just make life a little easier? Like solve like a decades old problem at this point.
I just
That's a good point.
I don't get it because some case manufacturers have like a nice little easy thing to pop on, or no, is that the motherboard manufacturer? Yeah, sometimes there's a nice little like, but yeah, why can't?
Full on. Yeah.
Yeah, it comes in the box with the motherboard usually.
Like imagine if every case just had that kind of like adapter kind of thing built in, so you don't have the individual loose cables, right? It needs to come from the case manufacturers, right? Like I think that's where it starts, because the header on the motherboard is always the same, but the case manufacturers, it depends on how many of those headers are getting used. But what if you just always terminated it in the same plastic end? You just whatever wires or whatever pinout you're running to it.
Well, so for example,
adapts.
like they had this for monitors for the longest period of time. 15-pin VGA was this. It could do a bunch of things with that 15 pin. It didn't need to do them. DVI was technically the same. Like, it is actually really weird that this didn't happen for the internals. I have no idea why it didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Weird.
That is a good hope. All right, now let's get into Elena's favorite part of it, is the stark reality, the stark truth of 2024. What do we think is actually going to happen in 2024? Elena, you seem to be really excited to dig into this.
Excited is not the word for it.
So what?
Disappointed.
Yeah. What are your
Scared?
thoughts? What do you?
Bad.
Yeah, you're looking at your crystal ball and you're like, oh man, 2024. This doesn't look good.
It seems like we're not going to be enjoying a golden era of building this year. I was hoping for it, but it seems like as like GPU prices are improving, at least in like what we used to call the middle tier, right? Other parts are going up. So Mark Hockman, our colleague Mark Hockman, wrote a story about how analysts think that I think it was RAM and SSD prices will be going up this year, which is a bummer because was it like last year, like up until about mid last year, you could get SSDs for like ridiculously good prices, and I was hoping that was going to continue because Gordon has his heart set on getting like a 4 terabyte drive for like, I don't know, $125.
That'd be nice.
I thought maybe this would be the year. I could finally go back to him and say, please stop asking me. Here it is. Just go buy it.
I did feel like I saw a lot of people around Black Friday be like, hey, you know what? This is probably the last kind of deals you're going to find for storage. Like, and there were some pretty damn good deals, so you should probably stock up now.
Yeah.
Yeah, get those 2 terabyte SSDs while you can.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's my contribution to the bummer side of
all
things.
right. Will, what do you think we're actually going to see in 2024? The harsh
Adam,
reality.
I'm real worried about Intel's 15th, their move to the chiplet architecture
on the desktop.
That's real scary to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw how with AMD, they've paved the way on the software side, presumably. But it is that is a scary giant transition for a company that has traditionally relied on process improvements to show real performance gains and
Right.
fingers crossed, I guess.
Yeah, well, you would hope that Meteor Lake, that they're going to get through some teething pains on the laptop side, that maybe by the time the disaggregated architecture comes to desktop, that like, oh hey, you know what, we figured it out on Meteor Lake. We went through the teething pains on Meteor Lake. The next one, yeah, much better.
I just, mobile and desktop are so different these days in terms of TDP and like the power that's going in, the power that's coming out. It's good. Like there's a reason they ship mobile first. I get it. I'm very interested to see what nightmares await for the people who sign up on day one to buy those machines and drop 5090s or 4080 Ti super duper editions or 4090 Ti super duper editions, whatever.
Yeah, I do wonder if, because this is going to be such a huge change for them, that actually people will look back and be like, oh, you know what, 14th gen, we should stock up on 14th gen because those were stable, those were reliable. Sure, they weren't like exciting, but guess what? Those were the last time Intel was like really stable for the next while.
We're going to be really like when we're sitting here next year, we're like, man, I really, those 14th gen 14900 so stable and only 145 watts. It's that's the darkest timeline.
Oh,
We'll
gosh,
see.
you're right.
I don't know. I also think it's it really gonna come down to configurations, right? How many different kind of tiles, how many different variations on the tile formats are they gonna have? Like, you know, yeah.
Right.
Because I mean, right now it's like the sky's the limit. On mobile, they're a little bit more restricted, and you know they're aiming at something specific. But like, you know, on a because they're moving to a new it's what's the pin layout, 18 something. So the socket's going to get a little bit bigger, I think, or the pin density.
The darkest timeline is that they need to use all 5 numbers to differentiate the product line. So it's the 14923 and the 14925 and the 14917.
Don't put that in the
like you
world.
said, they can infinite variability in the chiplets. Why not?
Yeah.
Oh no, please don't.
Yeah.
Please don't even put that as a
Yeah.
possibility for the universe to
sorry.
consider.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Elena.
Thank you, Ruru, to 1851. So LG
Yeah.
1851. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I also, I mean, it will be an interesting time with an NPU on desktop. Well, AMD now has, you know, or will have an NPU on the desktop. They were first, technically, yes. But also, the idea around an NPU right now is like about power efficiency, not really about, you know, pure calculation.
Doing anything with it.
Yeah. So that's why I'm like on the desktop. A lot of the meetings I had at CES, I was like, oh hey, by the way, how do you envision the NPU on the desktop? Because it's not really about power efficiency there. I actually, you know what? I do have. Let's see. I can bring this up live. I did ask that recently of AMD because I was following up on some information from CES, and I did ask specifically. Oh man, I can't find it. Crap. Okay. Well, I don't know. Oh no, I do. So. Yeah, dedicated. Oh, efficiency. The NPU can run AI workloads faster and significantly less power. On the laptop, that can translate to better battery life. On desktop, where power is less of a concern, it still allows users to free up CPU, GPU resources when multitasking. It can also prevent CPU, GPU from having to ramp up with the accompanying fan noise that may be associated. So, I do think there are some benefits to be had, but not the same. I'm curious to see what the benefits are.
Yeah, they really need actually a use case to show to the user for it. I think on a desktop space, like you're saying. Yeah.
Well, Alex, cold hard truth, 2024.
Mine's not going to be anything about hardware. It's going to be very cold software truth about how some of your favorite developers may close. Some of your favorite game developers will stop existing this year. And a lot of people are going to be laid off this year. Unfortunately, it's the trend in the industry that there was a ridiculous period of expansion that occurred, and perhaps over budgeting on the executive side of things. We already saw it with Unity and Epic, and it's probably going to go to other places this year too, including places that look like they should be being successful, and you'll be surprised. So. That's really unfortunate.
Do you think that's also going to translate into worse ports as well?
Oh gosh, I hope not. I don't want to. I already have.
I mean, if you're talking about less
with my
people,
job.
like if you have
I mean,
less
yeah.
people working on the thing, right? Like it's a finite
Oh, yeah.
resources over developers.
Yeah,
So
maybe at that point. Well, that could be a thing. I was actually hoping this year that I said on DF Direct that I think it's going to be a better year because there was, just like you said, Alina, COVID is behind us a good deal now. We're out of that cross-gen whatever issue that was there for so long, and I thought it would be a good one. But if actually budgets are impacting ports more so than other factors, then like you're saying, Adam, maybe it's going to be an even worse year for these phones. I hope
yeah,
not.
well, yeah, and yeah, honestly, I think people, my cold hard truth is that I feel like we're gonna see more power, more bigger bar better chasing. That whatever comes out is gonna be continuing that trend of drag racing rather than efficiency. But
I think
So funny
Alex.
you say that though, because that would not be a bad thing in Gordon's book.
I know, no.
No,
Gordon's sitting here like, hell yeah, give me more power, baby.
if it's a 0.5% better, that's better.
Hey,
Better
bigger bar
enough.
better. I really do need to make that shirt. I think that would become our
I would
best
buy
selling
that
shirt.
shirt.
Bigger bar better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Alex wins the biggest bummer award here. So
I'm sorry.
congratulations.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, like actual people getting
Yeah.
laid off. Thanks, Alex.
It's a heck of a thing to win.
Yeah, you just you heard it here first. Alex says mass layoffs everywhere.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Other trends. Anything software related? Somebody in the chat, Chris, friend of the show, Chris asks, "Do you think Windows 12 will come out this year? Do you think we'll see a trend in Windows, the even number Windows being the better one?"
I'm old enough to remember when Microsoft told me that Windows 10 was going to be the last Windows ever. So I don't make predictions on the Windows side anymore, Adam. I've retired from that game. Yes, probably is the answer.
I mean, with the AI push, I think it's probable. I don't know how likely it is, and I don't know if what were they saying? Were they saying like summer is when they thought it might come out? I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case, but I do think something major is coming down the pipeline for Windows, just because I don't think just adding AI to Windows 11 is going to be splashy enough for what they want to do with it.
Do people want AI in Windows 11? It's the first thing I turn off when I install Windows 11.
Want is a really strong word.
Yeah. Can I just go back to paying for Windows, please? I'd happily give them $200 if they stop bothering me.
I'd agree. I mean, I would love to actually return to discrete licenses instead of Office 365. I had a conversation with someone about this the other day where the way you pay for it and the features you're getting back, like the Windows experience right now, I would rather actually have it be very disconnected from the internet, very disconnected from the ad world if I paid more for it. I would actually like that as an option as a user. So another pricing tier. I would maybe even pay more for Windows if it was like a dedicated offline Windows almost.
Sorry, Alex.
I know it's
here-
gone.
yeah.
It's gone.
Here we go. Instead of Windows 12, what if it's Windows 1? Like spelled out O-N-E, like the Xbox One, right?
That was more
Windows?
successful for Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
We had the Xbox One, now we have Windows One. We're going back to one. It's the one place you can do everything
Oh
offline.
no,
Yeah,
that sounds too plausible. Please don't.
Windows
thank
One,
you.
and then there'll be a Windows One S and a Windows One X. That's the
Please
Pro
don't do this to
license.
us.
No, thank you.
Windows 360 or
I'm
Windows
throwing up.
365. Yeah. Street Trout says yes. The only one you need. Windows 1 is the only one you need. There you
Oh,
go.
that would be bad.
And then
Windows-
the sequel is called Windows 360 for no apparent reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then it just red rings. Yeah.
It just doesn't even turn on.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Any more trends we want to talk about? Good or bad or indifferent?
I mean, I am indifferent to the AI stuff for now. I I'm
I don't think
hoping
you're
that
alone.
I think
Yeah.
I hope it actually bears fruit because I think there could be some cool things that come from it. But man, it's just feeling like what did we say in chat at one point where it's like they just copy pasted or copy replaced sorry, find replace blockchain meta now metaverse and now AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, there's just to be clear, there's really neat work and impactful work happening in AI and things like fact checking for radiologists, right? Like doing initial screening for radiologists that are looking for tumors and stuff like that. That is impactful and is saving lives and is good and is worth the carbon we're spending training those models. I think that hey, I can write a song in the style of Taylor Swift with ChatGPT probably doesn't fit that bill, at least by my standards. I don't know.
Agree.
Right.
Hard agree.
Hey, Alex, what's Digital Foundry's AI movement? Or yeah, what's your AI goals for this year?
AI, well, I would like to see DLSS ray reconstruction get some more iteration on it.
No. I mean,
out.
Digital Foundry is
Oh,
a
sorry.
company. Yeah. How are you integrate AI in your workloads? You know, are you going to make more
So-
videos? Is it going to edit the videos for you?
No, but behind the scenes, no. No,
here we
behind
go.
the scenes, Rich just literally, sorry if I'm saying something that's semi-private here, but there was a posted version of Rich saying something, but it was an AI saying it, and it was trained, and it was very interesting to say the least. It will have zero bearing on our work, but we did look at this, and it was very funny. But no, we won't use AI. The only thing, honestly, there's only one thing I can imagine us using AI for, AI models, and that is image quality analysis. Where right now it's a purely subjective thing where we say this is clearer. There's an entirely large suite of things I've done where I compare DLSS to XeSS to FSR2, etc. If there was an AI application there in terms of actually finding issues instead of going through a game in a manual way or coming up with some sort of index, a numbered index or value that would say things about image quality, I would actually like that. But it's essentially such a labor-intensive, subjective process.
I was going to say you can't have a corpus of data big enough that's tagged to like train your own thing on, right? Maybe
we
you've
don't.
been doing this for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I have something in my throat. But we don't. But companies like NVIDIA do.
Okay.
And that's how they can make DLSS in the first place. And I think if similar principles were brought over to image quality analysis, it could lead to really cool videos from us.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we would have to talk with people about that first. I'm not an AI expert.
What if you train your own AI algorithm and it's DFSS, Digital Foundry Super Sampling? There we go. Yeah. And you get
I
a
might get
developer to
sued.
put it in.
No,
Yeah.
you license that out is how this
Yeah.
works. That's
Also,
get that
yeah,
driver cheddar.
Yeah. Also, you need to have all the people on staff train their voices so that you can automatically in a video edit inject. So for my optimized settings, just some of the things you say in every video, each AI can inject it in there. You don't have to say that.
The event of my unlikely demise, untimely demise. Alex lives on. He lives on. He just never sleeps.
The AI version of Alex never gets a frog in his throat. That's all I'm saying.
Also,
Much
somebody
more reliable. 10.0.
Somebody in the chat, Liquidar, friend of the show, Liquidar in the chat mentions, I'm looking at your name right now on Zoom and it says AIEX, I think is what it says.
Oh.
So AIX, yeah. It's already here. How do you know? How do you know if this is the real Alex?
Yeah, it's like Metal Gear Solid at this point.
Yeah, right. Lale lule lo. All right, let's get over to some questions so we can get the hell out of here. We're getting tired and hungry. If you have any questions, get them in to the chat right now and at PC World, so it's easier for me to see it. If you are on Discord, or you should be on our Discord, hit the link in the description to put in a question in our questions and answers channel. And hopefully I will get to them live on the show. The first question is a $5 super chat from friend of the show, Denever1G1, says, thoughts on new QDEL tech? Technically more self-emissive than OLED, and apparently cheaper to manufacture than similar to LCD. Yeah, lots of acronyms. Any thoughts on the technology? I don't know. I don't know
Me?
much about to say. Yeah,
don't know that.
QDEL.
I was looking it up.
QDEL. I have to look this up. The fact that
Oh,
I
it's
have to look it
quantum
up though
dots.
says I'm not informed about it.
Same.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's quantum dot technology. It sounds like.
Oh, this is the auto emissive quantum dots that somebody announced at CES this year.
think
You guys
so.
were actually there working on the floor, so you didn't catch all the good stuff that came out. The benefit is it can be manufactured on existing lines using existing technology. Current quantum dots work by agitating quantum dots that are like a layer in front of an LCD. So the light comes through the filtering layer and then agitates the quantum dot. Somebody's come up with a way to self-illuminate quantum dots. It's the kind of thing that I don't. Borea Zero in chat says it's QDEL from Sharp. I'm always skeptical anytime somebody says, "Hey, we have a revolutionary new display technology," like when micro LED was announced 10 years ago, and we saw demos on the
Right.
show floor at CES, and like they haven't shipped at real prices for real people, or even real prices for like enthusiast high-end people yet. So it'll be a while. Would be my bet.
Yeah, somebody in chat is saying that it looks a little gray, or sorry, the blacks look a little gray, and I'm kind of eyeballing it right now, and yeah, it looks a little soft to me too. And so my thing about OLED, the reason why I like it so much, is because you get true blacks, and until a technology replicates that, it's gonna be really hard for me to give it up, even with all of its, I wouldn't say issues, but quirks. Let's just say.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Street Trout asks, is SLI even still a viable option this gen?
Is there an SLI connector on?
I don't think they do
No.
SLI on anything now.
No, but I know DaVinci Resolve actually does take advantage of multi-GPU setups. The fine folks over at Puget Bench always do some testing with multi-GPU, and it's like, oh, okay, if you want to stick two 4090s in there, you can see a benefit.
But yeah,
I mean,
And I'm sure AI workloads and stuff like that.
yeah, for sure.
But
Yeah.
for gaming,
No.
The dirty secret was that SLI was never like buying one card and then 2 years later buying a second card that was the same as the slow card was almost always worse than just buying a new fast card at that 2-year time period.
that's what I was going to ask. Yeah, well, was it ever viable?
Like in 1998 with the Voodoo 2, it was great because you got double the raster performance back when it really mattered. Since then, no, it hasn't mattered. I don't think
So
few
nah,
exceptions.
I'm like 90% right with you, Will. There was only like a handful of exceptions, and even then, there were a lot of caveats that were just not talked about. Like
Yeah.
micro stutter was one that like no one got their head around because everyone was looking at like bar charts all the time. Average FPS bar charts are the most important thing. It's not about user experience. And I think there was only a few SLI setups, including the ones in the 90s from the Voodoo line, that actually were micro stutter free. Most of them, especially like the ATI stuff, it was just stuttery as heck.
Yeah,
So, it was
you'd have refresh. Like I had a Crossfire X card one time that was two GPUs on one card, and that thing you'd see a split down the middle where it went up and down depending on which half of the frame was being rendered. And it was just a mess.
Love it.
Monolithic GPUs forever, baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or not, probably, I don't know.
Friend of the show, Ivan Romanazov, asked, what gen to gen, we're talking about GPUs here, what gen to gen increase would make you happy? 20% every gen? 100%? Like, what do you feel like if they kept the naming the same, 40, 60 to 50, 60, that kind of thing? Like, what kind of gen on gen increase would make you happy?
I feel like that's a lawyer type answer. Like the lawyer answer has to be involved here because it's like, well, how long am I going between generations, first of all? Right? Like if they come out with a new card every 2 years versus every 5 years, my expectations are going to be very different.
Also, increase in what? In
Yeah.
DLSS performance, in ray tracing or ray reconstruction performance.
If you
in
give me
pure
a
raster.
20% increase in the 1% slowest frames, I'm probably pretty excited about that, right? Like that's a good measurable improvement.
Right.
But it's always I always want more. It's
Okay,
never fast enough.
What
Always be
if the
faster.
more is DLSS enabled?
That's fine.
That's fine. I mean, if it's doing something different to get an approachably similar quality, and it's somehow a metric that's 50%, I'm very happy with that. The one thing I would really like, though, is the equivalent of what we saw with the 8800 GT, GTX 970, to a certain degree, the GTX 1060 and GTX 1080, where it, like, in comparison to the previous 60, it was almost like the 80 series in the 60, or
Yeah.
something like that, or like it was like the previous high end, but now the 70 series. I really like that. I think, I don't know what percentage that is, but if that happens, that's usually a pretty great thing in my mind.
Mr. Vipitus asks for Alex specifically, have you seen the Intel Extra SS supplemental material?
Okay, so I talked about this on DF Direct recently. I looked it over, but there's a lot of real life stuff happening right now for me, so I've been slowing down on work a little bit, and I have not gone to looking through the supplemental materials yet in a fine way where I can actually comment on it more greatly.
Okay. Fake Blood asks, this is a good question, is direct storage still something to look forward to, or is it not going to matter that much? I'll tell you the truth, I thought by this point, there'd be way more direct storage games than there are on the PC right now. Because I remember when Forspoken came out, a lot of people were like, okay, is this direct storage? And like, hey, more games will come. I'm sure more games will come. Where are those games? So also the direct storage implementation, right, can be different depending on the game. So what's the holdup? Where's direct storage on the PC specifically?
I actually have... I saw a great comment the other day on Beyond 3D, and I think it actually talks about it a little bit. I think direct storage's lunch was eaten by something else. Just like the interesting thing of like variable rate shading was another technology that Microsoft was like, variable rate shading of your GPU. And it's like, not a lot of games use it. It's not, it doesn't have a great utility actually. And I think direct storage is a similar thing where like the actual issue for most games loading is not taking advantage of like SSD speeds and decompression. It is actually making sure the engine is feeding that data in a multi-threaded way to the SSD, which has almost nothing to do with direct storage at that point. And so I think that is the big deal. And it's why we can see things like PC games loading the same or even better than something like a PlayStation 5, even though they don't have direct storage. It's because engines have to be rewritten over time to take advantages of SSDs regardless of direct storage. And I think its lunch was eaten a little bit by just better tech.
That's what I mean. We looked at it. We were like, oh, we should support direct storage with Anacrusis, which is admittedly small, not AAA game. But by the time we just did the basic loading optimizations and the stuff that we needed to do to make hard drive based PCs work, we were already at our load time was already less than the cutscene that played at the start of the game to hide load times. So it didn't matter. Right. Like our screens were so fast we couldn't put tooltips on them because because you couldn't read them. Right. So it's like, and that was for free. That was with doing no extra work and supporting no extra APIs. So it doesn't matter. It's a checkbox thing.
Ah, man. So it's dead on the vine then, huh? It just...
Well, I don't know if I'd call that dead. I'd call that supplanted by the state of the heart, right? Like that's a good death. That's not a bad death.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. It's not direct sound 3D.
I feel like that was like the, oh, hey, wow, this technology that's awesome is coming. You want to make sure you have the right hardware and all that kind of stuff. I guess that's marketing, but yeah.
So I actually want to maybe in like a year do a like DX12 or like do like a, was this a bust? Was this good or is this a bust thing? And I'll like say like, was DirectX ray tracing good or a bust? Was, this feature that was everyone went crazy about and then it didn't even matter at all, so
interesting. Couple more, then we'll get out of here. Denver A1G1, I don't know if it's the same as in the chat over on Discord, said, question for Alex, if we morphed SLI into one GPU rendering on one monitor, so example, 3 monitors with 3 independent GPUs and no SLI bridge, instead of splitting the GPUs to drive a single monitor, do you think that would have or even could have on better than Stutter, Terafest, that AFR and SFR on classic SLI?
I mean, that would be cool for that very specific use case. It could also be
like a racing
I think
sim
it actually
setup.
VR games it might have some applicability there, and I think that is like actually a cool case, but I think no one's gonna really support it.
A friend of the show, Boris Ras, on a scale of 0, which is rasterization, to 10 being path tracing, where would you put generic RT in terms of image quality? They've watched some 3-way comparisons and can help think that RT is not even halfway in terms of image quality.
Yeah.
But what do you think?
I mean, yeah, like as soon as you start replacing like direct and indirect lighting with stuff that's like done by path tracing, it starts looking ridiculously different than like the just like single effect ray tracing stuff. So I'd agree with them. It's like kind of like a 4 on a scale of 10 of just like simplifying this stuff.
Do you think it's different because like there's an effect when video codecs change, right, where your brain has filtered out like the MPEG 2 artifacts that you see on DVDs and you get used to them and you don't see them anymore? Do you think that's just because we're used to the weirdness of raster lighting, or you think it's because you think in 2 years when we have this conversation you'll be like, oh yeah, it looked better. Yeah, I go back and look at that old stuff, it looks better than I remembered.
I think people have very biased eyes of what they're used to seeing, and I think I'm guilty of it myself at times. But you can only look at the state of the art and say like, oh, okay, that's good enough. But I think in regards to like rasterized lighting stuff, I think a lot of people don't realize how shiny the real world actually is. Like everything's a mirror, just a variable roughness, to quote my colleague. And I remember when Battlefield 5 came out, everyone was like, how can those cars be shiny?
Yeah, they're too reflective.
This takes place in 1940. I'm like, do you know what metal looks like? I have no idea.
Everything was duller back then. It was the old days, you know?
Everything was black and white in 1940. I love that stuff. But yeah, I think people have like biased sights and eyes and all these things.
Yeah. All right, a couple more here. Friend of the show, Liquid R, a really good question. I'm curious to hear this one. For the DF retro comparisons, like what you just did with Max Payne 2, do you do a complete build each time, or do you have ton of classic components laying around that you need to like hunt down for? Like, how do you put together these rigs?
There's 2 rigs. There's 2 ideas. 2. One of them. Well, no. So I have got.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah.
But there's two ways. One is like a dedicated CPU to a time period, and I don't really switch anything else other than the GPU and maybe the amount of memory. And then that's one thing I do. And another thing I do is like for anything that's like Pentium 2 up to Pentium 3, like really early Pentium 2, they're all using the same socket and you can just switch them in and out. And I actually use usually a plug and play. I wish I could show it to you right now, but I actually don't always host on an old school HDD, but I actually have an SSD that I pop in and out of the PC that loads up a different Windows configuration. So it's like Windows 98, 95, etc., Windows XP. It depends on the thing. And that's a way to do it. And yes, it is just having a lot of the hardware usually to just make sure it's not everything's super accurate. Like sometimes for a video, I'll say like, I don't have something like a GeForce 256. That is a ridiculously expensive GPU to buy. I can't afford one.
Really?
So a GeForce 256 is surprisingly rare. It is very rare to find.
Like the SDR ones or the DDR, or does it matter?
Well, no, SDR is easier to find than DDR, just because it was cheaper.
Yeah,
but I think DDR, which is the one I would want. I would want the
You want
DDR,
the good one, yeah.
GeForce. I want the good one, and I can't hand out more than 300 euros for an old GPU.
Yeah.
I'd feel bad.
I'll look at my old crap bin in the garage, Alex. I'll send you one if I have one. I think I might have one now.
No.
I would love it.
Put it in your lockbox right next to your CRT.
Yeah.
Because that thing is going to be worth money.
Only going to appreciate. I look. Gordon found an NV1 in the Max PC lab once, and
What?
Yeah, unopened NV1.
Unopened.
Wow.
I feel like he gave it to Jensen at some point in exchange for some unspoken favor. We'll have to ask him.
Wow. NV1 is
I've never heard
that's
the
another
story.
thing that
I'm
I
going
would
to have to
love
text him.
Yeah. Like when we told NVIDIA we found it in the lab, they were really uncharacteristically excited. So it was.
That's so cool.
Well, follow-up question on this. What's your system to keep track of old components, or is it just madness?
It's madness. Like this stuff is awful. I don't know if you can see it. It's awful. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody in Discord remind me to take a photo of our big box of old GPUs. We just have like a big box of literally just old GPUs just like stacked on each other. That thing.
That's actually more organized than the Max PC closet used to be. To be
Oh,
honest,
It was so bad.
it was so bad.
The lab at when we were on Oyster Point was. It was just at some point it was just like normal people can't come in here because they'll just be scared. It's too much. Because we never threw anything out. It was yeah.
Oh, it's bad. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it was good, but it was also bad.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Adam, you need to do a thing where you talk to people who work in this space and get them to show you their storage schemes. Because somebody has to have cracked this, but every time I've ever talked to somebody, they're like, "Oh yeah, I just have a shelf that's a nightmare somewhere in my office or my shop or whatever." So.
I mean, I'm trying to keep our space organized. I'm having a hard time keeping up with it, but yeah. At least at the PC World office and the hardware that I'm looking over.
Well, I don't think it's an organization issue. I think it's that we don't have time turners issue, because if we had an extra hour after every build or project, we could just put things away nicely.
Well, but the other thing is the thing that you need to keep versus the packaging that it comes in that makes it easy to stack on a shelf. Like you shouldn't, like you don't keep, I have the stupid 4090 box over here that unfolds like four ways
those
and takes up
huge.
5 times as much space as anything just because it was such a spectacularly goofy box. But like the video card is a pretty normal size, but you can't like just put it in a bag and pile it up on a shelf and stack it and hope it's still going to work the next time you need it. So,
gosh, I'm not about to say I do that, but I might do that. Oh no.
Steve from Gamers Nexus does have a nice shelf for GPUs. I don't know if you've seen in one of their B-roll shots. They have like I think custom made shelves where they just stack the GPUs like bare on some sort of like custom shelving.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
I think it might be one of the things where if somebody is good with woodworking and wants to open a special Etsy shop for all the hardware reviewers, then that could be a factor. Or maybe it's a trip to a office supply store where you just use file folder things and you just start putting them in like that.
I need an intern. That's what I need to, or come in and organize the space. Yeah.
Yeah. Woodworking intern. It's the next role hiring at PC World.
Yeah. All right. Last question from friend of the show, Matt. This one's for Alex, or I guess anyone can answer this one. What do you think needs to happen for the community to regard upscaling and frame generation as accepted in terms of gaming graphics rather than just a gimmick or a crutch? What do you think? Just time?
Do
you think it's just
Landmark,
old people dying?
I think landmark titles tend to do it, like where there's like a conversion process because everyone gets so FOMO and hype about things that they need to try it. I think that's one thing, like a killer app for all these things. I think there's historical examples for that. But also I think in regards to frame generation, just trying it, I think people who try it tend to be like, oh, this is great. I have yet to actually meet a person that I've personally met, not one that's posting online somewhere, but someone who's just who happened to have an RTX 4000 GPU and they turned it on and they thought it was bad. I personally never met someone like that.
I don't think it's bad. It doesn't feel right to me, so I usually turn it off. Like the benefits usually aren't like it's just like I'm not saying it's bad. It's just more like something about it doesn't feel right, and I'm like, I'll figure this out without it.
Like something you're perceiving or something that is in your head, you think?
No, I mean, I think part of it is the latency thing, right? Like seeing more frames without the actual latency improvement, I think is part of that. And I know a lot of people say like, oh, what the hell? That's why they hate it as well. Like I definitely feel it. It doesn't, once again, it's not bad. It just, as of right now, like, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to turn on. The other end of it, which is a personal thing, is like, as a video person, oh, hell no, I don't want somebody to put extra frames in my video. Are you kidding? So like as a video person, I'm kind of, against it, just theoretically. So yeah. But that's all. I understand. I'm an outlier on that.
No, I think
and it's
I
not
think
the
you have
same
a point
thing.
there, where I feel like obviously your use case is going to be very dependent per person, but I think if you could just turn it on, like for example, what refresh rates do you usually target actually, Adam? Very curious.
120. Yeah.
120?
Yeah.
And you're trying to get up to 120?
Well, yeah.
Like
I mean,
you're not going beyond it, right?
yeah. No, like the example was. I mean, the last time I did it was with Alan Wake. And I was like, oh, I've got a 4080 in here. Like, and I'm trying to at least get over a stable 60. And I'm like, okay, well, frame gen gets me there, but it just something about it just didn't feel right. And I was like,
I can get that.
Yeah, so I ended up just like locking it to 40 and being like, oh, I like a good 40.
Yeah. For the latency sensitive like you, which I think there's a lot of people out there, I think then you should start using frame gen when it's when your output frame rate is at least 120 if you're a very latency sensitive person.
Oh, interesting.
Because then you don't if you're like getting up to like 80 or 90 or so, you're going to feel it. You actually do feel it, especially on the mouse. You play with mouse. I think most of us play with mouse.
It's like trying to upscale from too few pixels, right?
Yeah. It's you just start getting more of the mouse feel. It's much more intense. Yeah.
Okay,
for sure.
that's funny. I never thought of it that way. Like I understood with the upscaling. Oh, hey, the more information you have to work with, the better it's going to be. I hadn't put that into my head with the frame gen
if
stuff.
it has to hold a frame that is like a lot longer to make the new one, it's just going to feel much worse on the mouse versus like, I don't know, 8 milliseconds or 16 milliseconds holding a frame. It's a big difference. Yeah.
I'm sorry. We have a somebody very special in the chat. Will Smith, the one Will Smith.
Hey.
He's in the chat. He has a question for you, Alex. What's your take on motion smoothing on TVs? Because the Fresh Prince loves motion smoothing on TVs.
I do not like motion smoothing on TVs. It's very different than for a game because a game is artistically usually designed around arbitrary refresh rates and frame rates. Movies and I don't know. I don't like motion smoothing at all, actually, for TVs.
Yeah.
It's a relief.
Yeah. No.
For
Okay.
audio listeners,
I was
Will
a
just
little
like
worried
wiped
there.
his brow.
Yeah. No. Actually.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because we had Jeff on last week. and
I
Jeff,
don't want to. I was
yeah.
going to say his name.
I
was gonna
totally
bring it up.
forgot. Oh yeah. Jeff from Craft Computing was like, "Oh yeah, I like it." I turned it on. I'm like,
Wait,
"Wait,
what?
And we were like, "What the
That
hell
wasn't a
are you
joke?
talking?" That wasn't a joke. He was not joking.
That was serious.
Yeah, that was serious.
Yeah, that was, yeah. See,
I was just like, "We're not going to talk about this, dude. We can't go there."
No.
no.
Yes.
That's more divisive than politics.
Okay, well, but
Yeah.
better question. If you go over to somebody's house and it's on, do you turn it off for them?
I have. In the past.
Do I have an like? Did they see? Are they in the room? Like, I wouldn't do it if they're in the room.
But what if they walk back in there like, "Hey, did somebody mess with the TV? It looks different."
Well, the power flickered for a second. It's probably nothing. It'll be better in a little bit.
That's a hard one.
That's great.
I try not to. I also try not to be that person. Like, I mean, I guess I don't go to GameStop anymore, but like at GameStop and like where the person's saying something really bad and then I interject and be like, well, actually, So in my mind, it's kind of the same thing. I try not to and be like, you know what, it's their TV. They can have it.
Look, we shouldn't yuck other people's yums except for on this one specific category of items.
Well, here's the thing, though, Will. I think it's a fair
great,
thing
Will.
to say, though, because it's like, how many people actually consciously chose it, right?
Right. It's the
Oh,
default.
I don't think so.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
But I think they would notice
Yeah.
the one time or the one or two times I've done it, they noticed it and they were like, "Hey, wait, something changed. Can you change it back?" Like they didn't, like because it's just different, right? It's not what they're used to. So, but they didn't consciously turn it on, but they knew it was off
They got
and they
used
wanted
to
to go
it.
back.
It's fair.
Yeah.
However, I do think there's a middle ground to this. This is what I do. Outside of anybody who's like not my parents, because I just take care of things for them, I just ask. I just say, "Hey, I noticed that you have motion smoothing on. Do you like that?" And then they say yes or no. And then from there, I help them, or I just say they're my friend and they live a separate life from me.
What if they say, Elena, what is motion smoothing? I don't understand. How do you describe it? Do you say, oh yeah, it's this horrible piece of shit thing, you don't want it on?
Yeah,
Soap
only
opera
bad
effect.
people
Yeah,
use it.
okay.
Soap opera
Yeah.
effect. That's what it's called
It's a good
commonly.
way.
Yeah. Oh, you have that on?
I don't say
Yeah.
it like that. I remain neutral because one day they may have to help me on something. I don't want them to remember me as the person who messed up their TV.
Yeah. Oh, that Elena, I can't have her over for
Self-serving.
popcorn
Yeah.
anymore
Yeah,
because
self-serving.
she
I respect
always
boundaries.
messes
I don't
with
be
my
that
TVs.
person.
It's very responsible. I don't have that level of self-restraint.
All right. Speaking of self-restraint, we need to get out of here.
Oh, wait! I have one
what?
thing, Adam. So
No, I
friend
got
of
to
the show,
practice
Coffee-
self-restraint.
No,
just kidding. No, I'm kidding.
I'm gonna work on violating other people's boundaries.
There we go. Okay.
In honor of Will. Friend of the show, Coffee, said something that I thought was hilarious and I think needs to be highlighted, which is when you said earlier about bigger bar better. Coffee said, well, that's the official motto of the show. And I think I never took Latin, so I'm going to mangle this, but I think they came up with a Latin equivalent of it where it's like bigger bar better. Maiora talia melius. So I think that would make a hilarious shirt. I just want to put that out there.
If anybody, if anybody who's watching or listening to the podcast knows Latin and can give us a direct translation of bigger bar better,
I think that might be it. So if you can confirm it.
Yeah. Please confirm it. Yeah, because that would be hilarious. And we'll get Gordon to get it tattooed on him. Just
It's
kidding.
just going to be a bar. It's going to be a bar with just the Latin only. No English translation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you need like
man.
a university crest with like the thing on the top, and like a coffee mug and a screwdriver and like a I don't know. Yeah.
No, it makes me
Weird.
think of like a locker room at a college football or something. It's got it over the door, and every time we go into the studio, we hit slap it or something. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Falcon
please.
Northwest in chat just gave us another one. Translation: frame rate is life. Celeritas et vitae. Sorry, I took
Vitae,
no
yeah.
Latin.
Oh man.
I'm not sure if the Talia. I took Latin, but it's been 40 years, 30 years. The Talia, I'm not sure about, but I'll look and I'll do some
Thank
reading
you.
offline and get back to
Appreciate
you
it.
next time I'm over.
Oh my god.
That's
I
really
did
good.
not
That's
choose Latin
hilarious.
in school.
That's hilarious.
I chose German.
I love
It
it.
turned out to be way less useful than German. Who knew?
Okay, well, speaking of way less useful, we need to get out of here because we are not useful anymore. Our time is up. Let me go to the notes. Yes, check back next week for your fix of PC talk here on the Full Nerd. To listen to us on the go, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, Pocket Casts, anywhere you can point your RSS feed to. Hopefully, we should be on there. And every time you do, a Latin translation gets dictated for us. And I appreciate that. Thank you. I want to thank the people who are joining me. Will, thank you. And where can people find you? Where would you like me to point people to?
People should find me at techpod.content.town, the home of Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod, where every Sunday morning
Great
we
show.
break down a single topic and kind of dig into what we find interesting that week. Last week we talked about weird first-person shooter controllers from the 90s.
was good.
Like there
That's
was
cool, man.
Yeah, there's a glorious
awesome.
period of time when like Logitech and Microsoft and all these companies thought, man, if we crack how to play first-person shooters, we can patent this and sell these controllers to everybody till the end of time. And
really good
no one
episode.
did because we just use these. It's a mouse. It turns out it's pretty good. Every week it's techpod.content.town. That's where I am. Thanks for having me as always, Adam.
I like it. And thanks for Alex Battaglia for showing up and graciously spending some time with us. Always appreciated. Where should people go find you on the internet?
Well, I guess I'm on Twitter, or as they call it these days, X.
The X.
I'm under my name. You can just probably search my name. I'll be there. And also just look at DF's Digital Foundry's YouTube channel. I post a video usually every week. And of course, we have our own kind of vidcast, I guess the phrase is.
You
every
need to
week
go
there'll be a
live.
direct
You
vote.
need to. I don't know who you need to talk to, but you need to do it live.
Live, we could do a
Live's
live
fun.
special. We were originally going to do our 100th episode live with a very special guest, but the very special guest had to cancel. It would have been incredible, but it was a big name, very big name. But so it goes.
Will Smith.
It was Will Smith.
No, it was Will Smith.
Wow, so exciting! I love that guy.
Okay. Well, thank you once again. I appreciate it. Get some rest tonight. And thank you also to Elena Yee for popping in. Always appreciate it when you can. It's good. I told you offline. I think it's going to be your thing now. We're going to have episodes where like it starts with you not there, and then all of a sudden people are just going to be waiting. T minus to 11 to Elena showing up. So
You can run a pool. You can get a see what the minute is.
oh
that-
yeah,
that
we
she
should start taking
appears.
bets. Like
Yeah.
when
A
will
little side
Elena
action.
pop into the podcast?
We spun a whole new subsection of betting and gambling in Vegas.
Yeah, I love it. Anyway, and thanks everybody for hanging out. It's been a good time, but we need to end it. So I'm gonna play the outro and get us out of here. Goodbye.